to leadership and governance meeting. Small proof of that. We will get through what we need to. Apologies. We've got Councillor Hayes, Councillor Roll, Councillor Nixon, and the CEO. Do we need any leaves of absence in meetings?
Not from me, no.
No. Can we just get someone to move the apologies? Charlie, second Macca, don't fight over fellas.
We'll just have to stay awake to make sure we're...
On some forks if necessary.
Minutes of our previous meeting. We don't have time to go through that.
No business from me.
We get someone to no business arising, Charlie, from previous minutes. Moved Councillor Murphy, seconded Councillor Biddlegan. All those in favour? Unanimous.
Actually, the interesting question in that, if we don't get a unanimous decision on that, does it then get referred to the general?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Can we continue without that being? No. If we were to agree on that, I would say that we'd have to postpone the meeting.
That's correct.
So meeting actions, business review of our outstanding meeting actions.
The fraud and corruption finalisation of that work through the chair is before the meeting today, finalisation. I've just checked with Marnie, that second item is yet to be done, but she's going to try and prioritise that. She's a bit of backlog to get through, so that's the letter to the SES groups. The drug and alcohol policy is going to the Workplace Health and Safety overarching meeting on the 23rd of this month. The non-compliance issues, Department of Environment and Heritage Protection, that was before a meeting recently and is progressing. And there is a compliance presentation which will be coming before the Work Committee and General Council on the 21st of November and 22nd of November. The Q4 operational plan has been before Council, and an item on today's agenda is to finalise the review of the 16-17 operational plan and the outstanding items from the previous operational plan. The review of the councillor complaints process has been finalised, and it has been tasked for ourselves to work on incorporating the amended behaviour opportunities in our policies. So Lila and I have already had a discussion on what that work looks like going forward. The review of the strategic document register in a meeting that we had when we met in Blackwater, I think it was on the 12th of October. We requested to have a look at some of the strategic documents at this committee. One was the 10-point plan, the second was the council induction process, just a review of that and the thoughts on that. The third was the enterprise risk management framework. So I guess just a bit of an idea of what the committee would like to do in that space and how you would like to review those. Is it amended documentation you would like to see, or would you like to be part of the review of the documents? Presently, the team is undertaking a review in the enterprise risk management space to do an integration across our processes. So is that something you'd like brought to the table once that process is finalised, or would you like to actually have a look at it on the way through? I guess it's a bit of a, how would you like to have a look at that documentation?
There's many more people riding this game that do it well. I think bring it to us and let's have a look at it then.
After we've got to that draft stage for a bit of input.
That's for the risk management.
For the risk management
yes.
one?
Yep.
The council induction process, I was looking at probably a bit of a survey type scenario, if that was suitable.
And there's an opportunity where we're all together very soon in some training at the workshops, that maybe we could address that and put that to bed. It should be a very easy clean-up, that one.
Great.
If we can do that as a part of our training and just grab us for 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
Yep.
But get it out to us that review will be conducted and that we come prepared rather than just ad lib at the top.
Great. And the 10-point plan, that was the advocacy document. And I think you talked to that previously, Councillor McIntyre, in relation to being prepared going forward. So I guess as well, that's a scheduling of a bit of time together with yourselves to look at what.
And I think councillors need to really be a part of that one.
Absolutely, yes, to drive our agenda for that moving forward.
Yeah, so whether we put some time aside just with all councillors to review that.
Potentially in the strategy sessions for all of council.
Yep.
That one.
Yeah.
Thank you for the direction on that. And the final one was the
15, 16.
standing 15, 16, which is part of what's encompassed in today's agenda items as well. So, no further questions on those actions?
No.
No? Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mary, just with how's things going with the workforce? Does that look like on the 21st and 22nd, I think it is, you're having meetings? Or is that when it comes back to council in regards to the drug and alcohol?
The review of the drug and alcohol policy.
Are you bringing it back on the 21st, 22nd?
It's before the overarching workplace health and safety forum at that time.
Okay.
So what Sandy's doing is working with the HSR, so the health safety representatives, working through that, and will engage with union representatives as well on that documentation. At this stage, yes, yeah. So
it
it's
just
working.
needs to be tidied up, that's all.
Absolutely, no, it is progressing in that space, but certainly if you'd like to see it after it's been to the Workplace Health and Safety Overarching Committee, we can bring it back and have another look, but it is progressing.
No, just an update, no need to bring it back, just to update.
Update where
how
it's,
it's
yeah,
going.
no, moving on.
All right, we're just going to rearrange the plan a little bit and go, Lila's going to do the first section, then we're going to jump to the last one and come back to reviewing the operational plan. Is it? Happy with that?
Absolutely, thank you. Lyle, would you mind looking at the, or addressing the fraud report firstly?
And so I brought before you today all of the documents that encompass our fraud and corruption control framework. So the documents themselves were developed as an action to address issues which were raised in the Auditor General's Fraud Management and Local Government report, which was tabled in Queensland Parliament. You would be aware that we've been working on these for some time. They have been presented previously, both in this forum and also to the Audit Committee. Most recently, they were presented to the Audit Committee and they were happy with the documents, with one update requested, which was about providing information on confidentiality, anonymity and protection of disclosures in that space, and the request was that that information be included within the control plan and very much towards the front end. So those that were using the documents were very much aware of that from the outset. That information has now been included, and all of those documents are provided today, requesting for your consideration and adoption. The one other document that I have provided today in the attachments is the fraud risk register in its completed form. So it has not before been presented. So if you would like to look at any of the documents, I would suggest that would probably be the one to have a look at.
Page 60.
Pardon?
Page 60.
So the information which has been included surrounding the confidentiality, anonymity and protection is included on page 3 of the control plan. The rest of that document is as presented to the Audit Committee. So the register itself, the intent of that is that the oversight for that document will be provided by audit committee. So it will be updated on a quarterly basis in line with our strategic risk register. And both of those will go to audit committee and then come before council.
Got any questions for Laura around that?
Yeah, just in regards to the register, you know, some of the stuff we put in some controls or existing controls, and then we put in other controls, and just not changing the risk level. So what else do we need to do in that space to minimise the risk? I have got some concerns with the amount of controls around some of them, i.e. kickbacks. I think we need to be looking at more controls, and yeah, we're not doing a great deal with 5,000 or less dollars. You know, you can do 10 little kickbacks under 5 grand, and it's not going to get picked up. You know, so if we're on selling a vehicle or offloading a vehicle through some way or another, and I'm just concerned around those two areas in the procurement. It could be some more work required, but if you believe we've covered every scenario, I'll run with it, but I'd like to talk a bit more about it if anyone else is prepared, because we're looking at, where is it, authorised payments, I've got here, revenue fraud, where's that one? Revenue fraud, making changes to rates. Oh yeah, that was, sorry, just on that revenue fraud, is there others? It only relates to the actual changing of rates or potential changing of rates, is that correct?
Yes,
In the revenue fraud?
Yes.
Yeah, what happens if you want to load a truck out of the quarry without it being weighed? What happens there? Is that fraud or is that something else? Is it a revenue thing, or does it go somewhere else in here? Is that an employment fraud? I'm just saying, you know, is it a revenue or is it?
Yeah. The register itself is a living document, and you'll notice on the right hand side it does say it's a new risk. So we've not had this document before at all.
Okay.
So the intent of it is to capture the risks that we have and to continue to work to reduce control measures. So, to reduce the risk through application of further control measures. So what you'll see is next quarter when it's presented, when they've done a review of the risk, which is documented in the right-hand side of the table in the risk monitoring section, the risk owner will have then actually indicated whether they've put those control measures detailed in the risk management plan in place. If they've put them in place, then you would expect to see that the risk level has gone down, and they will also detail in the risk monitoring further control measures that they will be putting in place and due dates for those. So it is work that we continue to work on to reduce those risks, and it also will be where we will add new risks. So where a risk is identified, such as the one that you've just brought forward now, we will add that to our risk register and continue to monitor that.
Yeah, because I just wasn't sure, is that a revenue sort of thing, or is it an employment?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in either way, it's not really covered. Those sort of situations aren't covered because, sorry, go on.
So I guess through the chair, it is, I guess, our first pass at all of this. It was last year that we started working on putting in this broad framework. So I guess this is the first presentation of the documentation, and where we go from here is rolling it out further across the organisation and embedding it in our processes. Now, I guess one of the things that we're looking at in that enterprise risk management space is how that we have all of these processes embedded across the organisation. So that's how we capture this as a day-to-day operational thing that people are thinking about rather than an add-on, because everything that we do in that governance space, people think, oh God, this is something else that we have to do. What we need to do is have people thinking about these things as part of their daily process, so it's not an onerous thing on top of what they're doing. So that's part of the work in that enterprise risk management space that we're doing at the moment, is embedding that fraud thought process as part of the process. So that's going to be built in across all the processes that are happening on the ground. So when we work with people at the quarry, so I'm trying to incorporate your example there, when we work with people at the quarry, we could possibly use that example and say, well, how are you capturing this? And if something does go awry in that space, that needs to be captured in this new fraud risk register. And what controls you currently have in place, or would put in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. And from a reporting perspective, if it did happen, who we have to notify. So we've lost revenue and we have an employee issue there as well that would go through the HR process and potential termination for theft purposes, fraudulent activity. So I guess it's a body. We now have a process that's in place. We now have the fraud and corruption as part of our induction process. Within the next month, it will be part of the E3 learning across the organisation, so everyone will have an awareness of all of this. And then the next stage is embedding it across all of our processes. So that's part of that enterprise risk work that we're doing at the moment as well. So
just watch this space as it develops. Is that the best thing? Yeah. Because there's certainly questions in regards to, heading there, kickbacks, also favouritism of suppliers. Yeah. There is concern surrounding that procurement area.
Absolutely.
Right across all industries.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we need to capture and get hold of.
It's certainly something that's very much in our space and governance area, and what we do and what we monitor and what we work on in that confidential part of our roles, and something that's part of the awareness side of what we're doing through the rollout of this framework and the work we're doing through internal audit and the expertise that's brought to that table in internal audit as well. So this framework's been through that process as well, with the vetting of the internal auditor expertise there from the external auditors, from Pacifica, our internal audit contractors that come in and do our audits. So they have a look at all of these protocols as well. And now that next step, Pacifica have been in, worked with all of our ELT team to look at where our audits go next. Fraud is absolutely on that list of things that we're looking at. So it's then about encompassing that, how we look at it over the next 3 year strategic plan in that audit place, and how we embed it in our processes. So it's sort of like this initial framework that embeds the rollout process from here on. So it's the education process next. People aren't, I think last night I was reviewing the program for E3 learning that's been developed, that we'll all see coming out on E3 learning by the end of this year, to make all of our workforce aware of what fraud looks like. And there are some scenario examples there of what it looks like, and it's the filling up the jerry can in the back of the truck, and one for the company, one for me sort of scenario.
And that's the concern of under that 5,000
exactly.
where it's a very low risk. Well,
yeah,
it is, but it's a cultural problem. I'm not saying it's in our marketplace, I'm not saying that, but it could go unknown.
Absolutely, and it can be as simple as, start of the school year, stationery starts going missing from, and it's that awareness of that's, potentially fraudulent activity. You're taking things that are paid for by the ratepayer. So it's that awareness and that push through the whole organisation, and it's through the scenarios that are built in that training to make people aware. And that's that next wave of what's happening after this framework's in place. So you'll see that rolling out and being a continual process.
So my last query is if you look at the procurement forward in that, and again go to the favouritism of suppliers. In our risk matrix, low is 5,000 or under, up to 5 million or whatever it is, depending, as a consequence. Is that why this is marrying up in that particular line with the 360 Pro tender process over and above 200,000? Because if you look at what's required, quotes and tenders, $15,000 or less, one phone call, no quotes. I just think this measure needs to measure all of it rather than just increments. I don't think you can incrementise it.
And I think in what we're doing in that space with Pacifica, our internal auditors, we're looking at the data analytics as well, and we're trying to utilise that to look at trends and look at who may be potentially trending as being favoured more so than others, and that will allow us, that data will allow us to analyse that. We do have a process in place, and that is audited and that is monitored through those procurement functions to say, hey, there's a bit of an anomaly here. We need to look a little bit further into this. Either this company is getting a lot of work and none of these aren't. So that's the monitoring through the data analytics and through the strategic planning of the audits that we do that pick up those things. Also, Lola and I went to some global government governance workshops and audit forums recently, and they talked about the data analytics and the data that you get out of this to alert us to these particular trends and things to identify specifically in these types of areas as well. So the things for us to monitor and keep our eyes on. So we're always trying to, you know, keep up with the trends and look for what's happening in these spaces. And, you know, there are some alarming things that are happening out there, you know, electronic signatures on annual reports or plans that are on our websites. We've got to stop doing it because the scammers are taking those and utilising those to fraudulently attack our organisations. You know, there are simple things that we're continually trying to keep up with what's happening out there as well. So doing what we can to keep on top of it, but the data analytics is critical in that space. We're doing what we can to educate ourselves and keep on top of those as well.
I can just through the chair as well provide some clarification there. The $5,000 for the risk consequence description was benchmarked against other councils. So some of this documentation was released by the LGAQ to all councils, and this is the consequence table that the councils are using. In saying that though, this is very new to a lot of councils, and so what's happening is we're using the risk consequence, but as we move forward, we may decide to have a look at our risk consequence and say, no, we want to look at a lower level from now on in the negligible category. So at this time, that's what it is. The other point that I wanted to make though is if it's over $1,000, we need to report it to the Auditor General anyway. So that's only a consequence level. It's not that we don't consider anything less than 5,000.
And I guess it's like anything in this space as well. We have to weigh up the cost of monitoring all of this and policing it and the actual cost of business. So we've got to keep that in balance as well. So clever processes to pick things up in the data analytics and ensuring our processes are adhered to and everyone's educated in that space.
I think it'll come through a lot of discussion. I mean, you know, Councillor McIntyre's probably raised a couple of things that I hadn't thought of within our business. So, you know, once we can identify those, and people, you know, within the workforce need to know what our stance is on that. And there is a consequence.
Yeah.
Because it happens in every business. And like you said, stationery. It's a simple thing. But how easy is that when people just get in that habit? It comes at a cost to the ratepayers.
Absolutely.
So, you know, we've got to make sure that we get this right.
That's correct, but it's also through the questions that you pose to us here as well. Sometimes we are so bogged down in the detail that we might miss something that from your perspective we haven't thought of as well. So it's really beneficial to hear your views from outside the box that we live in sometimes as well. So thank you for the questions.
You can push right to that other end of like signature fraud.
Absolutely.
And forget the other end.
That's right. That's right.
Before you know it, you got $5,000 come on.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't find it right now, but it was things like the fuel card risk matrix. After all, controls are still sitting at moderate, but some favouritism in vendors. One control, and it's sitting okay in the green. It's low. A fuel card, one, it's mapped, it's recorded, irrespective of where the fuel's used, but it's still a moderate risk, and yet the other one is very low.
And people just going to go back and look at a vehicle and go, well, that vehicle should use this much fuel.
Yeah.
Why in the last 20,000 kilometres have you used this much?
Yeah.
but you're right, there needs to be those.
And I guess
Controls.
it's the processes that are in the background that are dictating our level of comfort in those risk ratings that are being put there. So it's the adequacy or the integrity in that process that sits behind that. And the people that are informing those risk ratings are the general managers and the managers in those functions. So they're the ones responsible for the processes, understanding the processes and monitoring those on a monthly basis.
And interesting, it's a blanket one for all councils, so let's watch this space
Yes,
and see how we tailor that over the next couple of years.
We'll see it mature as we progress through.
So we just need to move that's going to go to council meeting, or are we accepting that?
I think we're probably at the point where we can just accept and push that through, adopt that.
So you got any more questions around that?
I have a question as far as reporting goes, but it's already been answered, so.
So are we happy to accept that, or do we want some more discussion around that?
Could you lay that up a bit bigger, please? Thank you.
Is that big enough, or would you like?
No, that's good, thank you.
We happy with that? Someone want to move?
So the resolution was that it was adopted
Representative?
for completion of the framework.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. I mean, the option is to take it to the next meeting for further discussion if you think we need to. It's a hard one, and that's
We've both got questions on it. We've had some fairly open stuff. There's only 3 here today. I'm very mindful that there's only 3 here. Me personally would like to see it go to a larger group.
Sure.
There is only 3 here
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
making a decision. I think it needs to go to a larger group.
Sure.
And- But in maybe a quick report from our chair to say that this is why it's come to this group, and
I think you've raised a couple of issues for it to go to a further discussion as to what, not so much what's in it, but what level do we want to take it? Because it's a blanket across all councils that sort of come in with the numbers and that.
you're not sure, Dawes.
Lola, you're looking like you want to say something before
I
I.
just wanted to clarify through the chair if I can, are you talking about the risk register going to council, or is it the adoption of the supporting documents that say that we need to monitor risk and this is how we deal with it? Because really what we're asking for is the adoption really of the control plan and the supporting documents, not so much the register, that's presented and received, but the adoption relates to the actual policy documents.
Yeah, look, I'll move it.
So your concern is really around what's on the register. So the register, by all means, we can take that to council and present that.
Would you like a report specifically on the risk register
Little
and some
more, yeah.
discussion on that?
A little
Either in
more
a,
on risk register.
Maybe we need to bring it back to this forum.
leadership and governance in a full session.
Yeah, at a session, but look, I think we need to move forward. So I'll move it.
And that risk register can be altered and changed at any time.
That's right, and it does get altered and changed at any point, and going forward, we'll see that more and more. Marianne spoke about the review of the enterprise risk. One of the changes that we're putting in that, we have a number of categories that we put risk into, so we might have reputational risk, we might have financial risk, work health and safety. One of them will be added in, obviously, will be a fraud risk. So when departments are working with their operational risk registers and when they're working on assessing risk for projects, etc., they'll need to assess not only the risk in those categories, but also the fraud risk. So as those risks are identified, they drop out the back bottom of those risk assessments, they'll be added to the fraud risk register, the same way that they get added to the strategic risk register.
You're presenting that later this month anyway, aren't you?
The
Register.
enterprise risk, yes, that's correct, yeah. So And like I said, the risk register, so not all of these documents will go back to audit committee and then will come to council, but the risk register itself will on a quarterly basis. So you'll see it change and evolve and mature over time as well.
So you're happy to adopt the framework and finalise that, but we'll bring the risk register and the discussion around what that means for the organisation going forward, around what we've discussed here today.
Yeah, I think we'll
To the
be
leadership.
taking it back to the audit committee
Yes.
later in the month, so
We
I
are,
think we
yes.
can discuss it.
Yes, so, and by then we'll have the strategic plan adopted out of the audit committee for the next 3 years as well, that's been developed in consultation with the LT. So there'll be a bit more to bring to that discussion as well.
Right. Moved councillor McIndoe, second councillor Brimacott, all those in favour? Right, so. moving on. So you going to come to this one?
Either way, do you want to, yeah, I'll be doing a lot of talking in the review section, so I'm happy to let Lila talk to the new look operational plan for Q1. Thanks, Lila.
So as mentioned by Marianne, this is our performance report for the first quarter of the current operational plan. It has not been presented in this format before. We have had a presentation every quarter against all of the activities and targets within the operational plan. This time, what we've done is provided for you in a graphical format so that you can see our overall performance. And then for each and every activity or performance measure, we've indicated the progress by a particular department. They've also included in there comments or commentary surrounding the performance and what's been achieved, as well as any measures that need to be taken to get them back on track. I just would like to point out before we look at any of the graphs that in mapping, for every single activity and performance measure, there is a target line that has been added to the graph. Now, the target line itself is based on an assumption. It's not an actual target line. And that assumption is that for every activity or performance measure that's in the plan, that equal amounts of work are achieved on whatever the performance measure is on a quarterly basis. So whilst you may see that a particular performance measure has not achieved the target as such, it may still have been awarded a green light as it is on track. That's particularly relevant for such activities where the bulk of the work may happen in later quarters. So, for example, the governance team themselves have to deliver the 17-18 operational plan. So we will have a green traffic light. We're still on track for that, but the bulk of our work will happen later in the financial year rather than at this time. So it's important to note that when you're looking at the actual progress against the individual performance measures. We have broken down for you on page 8 of the operational plan our performance measures by key priority so that you can see where they sit. You'll notice that key priority 6 has many more performance measures than the rest, the closest one being 37. But it is pleasing to note that for the Q1 performance report, that 179 of the performance measures are on target, with 20 not achieved and only 4 behind target. So we've done quite well this quarter. We've also broken that down further into progress by key priority so that you can see where those that were not yet achieved and behind target sit in which key priority, and then an indication for you how the actual departments are progressing against their key priorities. In addition to that, the back end of the document starting on page 10 provides for you the individual charting for each performance measure within the operational plan. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
No, it's pretty good to go through all the graphs, you know, and understand that they're a straight line graph, as you discussed. You know, some of your work certainly can't keep to that, but I would expect that they balloon up towards the end, and as is a lot of operational stuff. And it's very, very thorough, you know, it breaks it right down and everything. So it was interesting to go through the new format. I thought was very easy and very clear, so I appreciate that. I don't really have any questions. I think everything's mapping reasonably well. My biggest concern, we'll go over it, I guess, next is are we going to get everything done that we said we'll get done? What must we change and implement to get it done? Because I certainly don't want to be going come June, only 80% through. It's just embarrassing.
I think, through the chair, that's one of the benefits of delivering it in this format, is that for the staff that are directly involved with, you know, delivering the performance measures, they have a pictorial themselves, and when they can see, you know, for our department, we've actually achieved only this much, and this all happening at the same time as the review. You know, they've then been able to look at it and say, well, maybe I won't achieve, or maybe I will, maybe I need to modify that slightly. So with both of them happening at the same time, it's actually, whilst it's been a bit chaotic, it actually provided some direction for the departments as well.
Yeah, well, this is now November, mid-November, well, let's say November. You know, this finished in September. Will this new standard allow us, or this new way of formatting allow us to get, you know, come January 14 or end of January, which is 4 weeks after the next quarter, will we be getting this a little bit earlier? You know, if we're going to stay on target, does this new format help that? Presenting it to council?
The new format, I will say, whilst it's very clear and provides a lot of clarity and it's easy to read, it is very time consuming. The team itself is actually currently looking at yet another change to the delivery of the operational plan. So we're looking at what our options are that perhaps is not so onerous on the team members itself. So obviously we're looking to technology for that, and the technology that council already has, and how that might be utilised best to provide a similar outcome for not only for our councillors, for staff, and for the members of our community as well. So we're meeting at the moment with Microsoft to work that through, and we're actually looking at a tool that we have access to, which provides a benchmarking service, and it's very interactive. So in that, with that tool gone will be the great big 100-page document. You will be able to look at what you want to look at. So you'll go into the initial dashboard and you might see the graphs from the front end, and then you can decide which ones that you want to drill down into, and it will drill down into the individual graphic there. So, and we'll be looking at that point, once we've got that, what other data we can then collect as part of the operational plan reporting. You know, for further comparisons, initially we'll be looking at the current year. We might look at past years. Obviously, there's only so much data we can get from the past, but we'll certainly be looking at what we can then deliver in the future. So I'm hoping in the next few weeks to have more of an idea on where we'll be moving with that, and what outcomes it will provide us with. And obviously timeliness will be a key priority that we'll be looking at.
So yes, very onerous.
Oh,
Very
it's
happy
massive,
with-
and when I saw it, I went, holy crikey, you know, you got to love what you do, but
There were many hours that went into this.
Yeah,
I
and-
was happy with the result.
And I'm very aware of what you do to send these reports through, you know, and the amount of time that does take, but for us to keep on top of this, we need it.
Yes.
We need it sooner rather than later, because otherwise it's August, 2 months after June, and oh shit, we didn't hit budget, we didn't hit where we wanted to, so, yeah.
There's two components to that as well. It's not just the output side, it's the input side.
From
Making it
That's
easier
it.
for our managers and general managers to input
the
their
data.
data. You know, really, in this day and age, you should have one person inputting and then it does the output, whereas we've got so much data manipulation occurring to come out, to, you know,
To get to this
to give
output.
you a product. So, yeah.
So the software you're talking about, will that allow some of that to happen automatically?
Yeah.
With the input's happening and all you need to do is then, well, I want this and I want that.
That's right, yeah, and it'll be up to the user as to what they see. So they determine, you know, I don't want to look at it by department. I'm a member of the community, I care about what departments are achieving, I just want to know that the whole thing's being achieved, that my ratepayer dollars going into achieving these performance measures, so yeah. All we would then need to do is provide oversight of the data input end, because at the moment we've got to look at what they put in, then we manipulate it, and then we've got to look at the output. So we just look at the input and then the system will collate it from that area and provide it into the, the digital output that you'll see. And that can be published directly to our website for consumption then by the community.
So yes, working on a better solution, but, and timeliness, yes, critical, as you said.
That timeliness solution, how far out do you see that? Like, is that going to be, still going to be a lot of manual input for the next one? And then it's going to get easier? Just looking at the efficiencies of it and with the, how long down the track you see that it's going to get easy for you guys doing that, because it's no good if we've got 4 or 5 more quarterly reports. You know, it's the next one, and then after that it's going to get easier.
So my discussions at the moment with them is that we just need to progress forward and come to an agreement on what it's going to look like, and then we can have those workshops here, which they'll do, they'll be demonstrating and showing us how to use it and work it out. And what I would like to do, and I'm talking weeks, hopefully more so than months, so Q2 would be in the new format, performance report. But what I'd like to do then is, once we've got that up and running, is come back to you with the Q1 performance report again, so that you can see, well, this is how we saw it when it was delivered, and this is how it will now be in the future, rather than just wait for performance report 2, at which point you then, that's just how it is. So we will have, as part of the contract, the ability to make one amendment. So we need to put all that data in, have a look at it, and then say, no, we want that in this format or a different sort of a chart. We get the opportunity for that one amendment. So it would be at that time that I'd bring it back to you so that you can actually have a look at it and see what changes you would like. So, like I said, having worked on this, I really want it in place for the second quarter report. So,
Any more questions, councillors? So the resolution is to, for that to be presented to council. We're happy with that. The mover and second, Charlie. Councillor Brimmelstone's moved, Councillor McIntyre second, all in favour? Right, we'll move on to our operational plan.
Yes, okay, so this is did anyone need a copy before we entered into this? This is the part where we're going line by line. So, all right to kick off?
Well, if everyone's happy to keep going.
Yeah.
It's only,
So,
if we get to a point where it's dragging it,
We'll
just have a break.
right, excellent, all right. So the intention was, as this is the review that was due to come back, what you have in your spreadsheet before you is the recommended requests from each ELT member. Because of the ELT diaries, we weren't all able to get together in a group to do this, so Mary worked individually with each ELT member, reiterated to each member that this was the opportunity to review the quantum and delivery of what was in the 2016-17 plan. So you need to be able to commit to achieving these. You will see that there are a lot of requests to push out timeframes. in here. So we're hoping that it was all heard and that this was the opportunity to change things. Whilst there are no other ELT members present today, we have commentary from all of them in here. So I will work through all of that painstakingly with you. And this is, I guess, your opportunity to ask any more questions. We'll see how we go through the process as to where we go with this, whether we need to go back to further questions or we move forward to adopt a version 2 of the operational plan and let everyone work towards it. And the next report will be to version 2 of the operational plan rather than to version 1 that we just had a look at in the new format today. So are we right to start item by item?
Well, the other thing is, if I don't know if you've had a chance to go through it fully, Marco, do we go through this and just mark off ones because there might be further questions that can't be answered here? Or do we take it to the next meeting where there's everyone there? I suppose that's our.
So I think we've certainly picked a good day to rip through it. You know, there's 2 of us on this side of the table. You know, others have more to say about different things, but I think we can go through line by line, as Marianne's saying. Let's tick and flick, and if we've got to report back on some stuff,
We do, yeah. I think some of them are quite easy. Some of them are date changes. Some of them are wording changes, which are just to give more clarity to what the actual measure or deliverables are about. And I think that can only be a good thing, that when people are reporting, it's quite clear on what they're reporting about. So I think more is about definition than anything. There's, I think, only one request for deletion of something in there. So, right, to kick off, and we'll go through it. Feel free to pull me up at any stage. I've got people recording things as we go for any changes, and then we can take it there. Right, okay. So the first one is 1.1.2. It is General Manager of Communities. It's about developing the Central Highlands livability strategy. The request in relation to this is to reword the activity. So it's to change the activity itself. So the first column from what is recorded there now to for it to be consistent with Council's community and corporate plan to develop a livability strategy for the Central Highlands to improve the livability for all residents while promoting civic pride and aesthetic appeal throughout communities when successfully implemented. And the request is also to change the measure to strategy developed rather than scoping document developed. So the first 2 columns to change to reflect those, and also the target date to change to June 2017 from March 2017. So they're the requested changes from the General Manager of Communities.
It's such a big document, this, and it's something that we're having trouble measuring, like getting a grip of what the hell we're trying to achieve.
Yes, in the livability
In the livability,
strategy.
what is livability?
Yes.
It's oxygen, food, water. And yet we're trying to make it into something more meaningful than that. And June 17 isn't really honestly that far away.
It's not that far away now.
And are we setting ourselves up? Because how many workshops are we going to have on it is really immense.
Yes. What Brad's saying is that they've already got 25% of it complete. However, we are having a change in that area, although Brad's with us for 6 months.
I'm happy to approve that one.
You happy to go with that? So Brad will still be leading in that area for a while.
For whilst Brad's here, what happens?
Yes, but if you have concerns, I guess this is the time to raise them.
Just coming up to your budget at the same time with June, that's my only concern. But myself, not a problem with it.
But, you know, I guess this is the opportunity if we're wanting to push this back to the general meeting, have that discussion and say, we don't believe this is achievable, or let's have the conversation.
Well, I guess it's a matter of monitoring the status of it.
Monitoring the status, yeah,
If it's not moving, what, by
by
March,
Q2.
yeah, but
Yeah,
the question's got to be, pressure needs to be put on then. I don't see an issue with being pushed out to June, but we've got to make sure that it's moving. And especially with that role change.
Monitor the progress at the next quarter review.
And I think that's what some of it is monitoring that progress and like asking those hard questions. Why?
I just know that when we discuss livability at a council level, so confronting it and what is it, what policies we've got to have behind it, what changes do we need, what governance do we need, what is it? I just know there's concerns.
What is it?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been developed.
How do you develop a strategy for that within that timeframe, given?
Because the livability for 33,000 different people will be very different.
So we're happy to continue to move on, monitor the progress for that at the next quarter.
Yeah.
I'll meet with the GM and communities and relay those comments to him after this meeting as well. The next item is 1.4.1, provide a program to support and develop sporting and recreation clubs. The request in this one is to change the measure to read number of clubs participating in health club checks rather than number of participating clubs. So a minor amendment to the wording only. So the number of clubs participating in health club checks. So it's all around the health club checks rather than just number of participating clubs per se. Any comments on that in relation to the commentary there? Majority of health club checks expected within the 3rd and 4th quarters. Health club checks are part of the sports forum in February.
Look, I think the other side of that is the challenge of getting the clubs involved. It's not
So
just
the
a matter of
engagement.
being that, so yeah, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, some clubs don't want to check. It's just trying to get them engaged in the forums in February, so it's a matter of getting more of the clubs there, and I think earlier this year it was quite successful. So
not actually requesting a change to the number, just the wording.
And if I may, through the chair, that was the feedback during this review process, was that I think quite a lot of clubs have been invited to participate, and in this, the actual participation level. So that is why such a small change in wording is very specific.
councillors, any questions on that one?
So we're changing it, the wording a little bit, but are we coming up with a document still? The change of words?
Yeah, I mean, through the chair, my understanding from working with the group is that by measuring how many clubs actually participate, the goal would be that at the end of it, they will be able to have a more detailed approach to, I suppose, increase that engagement. So by just recording the number of participating is not going to give that validation, which is why they're not changing the number. They're happy with the number being there. It's to actually have that number attend and participate to provide meaningful data. And I think as we go through this, a lot of the changes are quite similar to this. It's to have that end result where there is something at the end rather than just saying 13. Now, what forum that report is presented in is outside the operational plan, but it is something that I would understand will be part of the commentary in quarter 2, 3 and 4. So that's my understanding of it.
Happy with that, councillor?
Next one, 2.1.2, is collaboration with Department of Energy and Water in undertaking the Regional Water Supply Security Assessment for Emerald Township. The request here is to extend the timeframe to March. It's indicated that this is behind target. That is due to the draft report not yet being completed. The final report is expected from the Department of Energy Water Supply by the end of the calendar year, which is why the request is to move the completion of this item out to March 2017.
Yeah, we don't have any option in that.
No, I
So
guess
we
it's
just
not within our control,
granted.
that one. Yeah, good, so yes. 2.4.6.
You happy with that, Joe?
No, yeah.
Your order, Hack, you've granted.
Yeah. Okay. 2.4.6, undertake formal review of resource demand of the rural road network, maintenance and capital. The request here is for the reports to be moved out, the target date changed from December 2016 to March 2017. An interim or a precursor report was presented to Council in the form of CHRC strategic links. Follow-up report indicating resource demand for the rural road network is requested to be moved out to March 2017. 50% complete has been indicated there. Any comments on that?
Is that due to some new developments in potential other works? Is that what's holding it up, or is it just?
Mary, can you comment on that at all, in your work with Gerard?
My understanding on it is there was quite a lot of discussion around this one at the start of the operational plan. And the infrastructure team have a number of agreements already in place, and it gets down to a time frame again of trying to get availability of the interested parties to attend to the meetings and work at the priority list of what works they can work on together. So then they have a good idea then of what rural roads will be addressed in what areas.
Because we're not just talking materials, we're talking equipment, we're talking absolutely everything.
Yes.
It's a difficult one to get right even.
Yeah. And I think, again, to the chair, that's where the issue around wording, what to detail and to put in there, has been voiced through the infrastructure group, trying to make sure they do that precursor report that can capture everything to emphasize that it is not a simple project focusing on the road. So that is my understanding.
Can someone enlighten me, have we done these reports in past years for this sort of road network thing? How much time do we spend on it, and do we ever get it even close to that?
I don't think.
You know, we're looking at Timber, Springshaw, we're looking at all these other,
Something that's been progressing for a long time. Yeah, it's still being worked on, so that's, your asset. It relates back to your asset plans as well, so.
My understanding, I think there's a similar activity in last year's operational plan with the Springshaw, Tambo, and a couple of other road networks, and I think I'm not quite sure the level of detail of what's different in the comparison from last year to this year, but my understanding is they do find them quite useful, but as to whether or not it's something that council want to explore further in terms of what is coming back from the manor put in, and that can be something I'm sure Gerard and Jason Akers would have quite a lot of data to back that. It's something I can follow up with Gerard, that might just be a general email to this group back with a small update on that.
it's just something, you know, we throw it out till March, we want our budget put to bed by March. We've got revenue streams through quarries and or whatever you say down there. There's so much in this, and are we likely to get it 75% correct? Like if we say $100 million or whatever, are we going to be even close? Do we overemphasise it? And just by giving an extra 3 months, are we going to be 20% better, 90% better? Or do we put the pressure on and get the thing done so that we know what we're dealing with? Because we throw it to March and then just comes in to the next meeting in April.
Yeah.
Budgets are done.
I guess, to the chair again, possibly similar to the monitoring one with the livability strategy. This should be something that would be flagged with the budget process. So when they start the budget talks and the reallocations of the budget reviews. Plus, as you mentioned, Q2 report will be presented in January. So I think by monitoring that then, I think you can query at that point if March is on track and then apply the pressure. From talking to the team, December just was not achievable. So if it's left as it is in December, you will then be reporting in Q2 and Q3 and Q4 as not having achieved your target. And it comes back to the focus on achievability. Whether March is achievable is, I suppose, another question again, but that's my understanding from the team on that, why the request was to, a small extension. It was, they were very much aware of those constraints and not extending it out until, say, June or Q3. So they were very much aware of that. Q3 will still enable them to have everything in place, my understanding.
I was going to ask John, why do they need that extension? Haven't they got the people to do the work? Or?
From my understanding, and I guess Gerard will be the best person to confirm that, was the priority of getting everyone together and getting the detail in place. So yeah, it was a timing issue rather than not being able to do the activity, but to get the time and to prioritise and have it done in a meaningful way by December, given the fact this update was just finalised quite recently. So he felt it would be not reflective for him to keep it at December when December's only a few weeks away.
It's a formal review of the potentially required demand. We get a flood, everything changes.
That's right.
Do we need the thing? We know what roads have got to be repaired, what roads are up, or is it? I'm just concerned that what are we going to do with it when we get it in March?
Yeah. Well, maybe from your questions, I think we need Gerard in the room. So I think potentially we keep working through and we then take some of the ones that are requiring some further discussion on back to another meeting, and we have the relevant GMs in the room to discuss those ones. I think there are some that we can easily push through here today, and we might not need to go back for discussion on, but there are some that you're very validly pointing out that we need the experts in the room for, to have those discussions about really what is the intent behind this, how does it affect the broader processes, so looking at it more holistically as to how it affects and integrates across the rest of the functions across council, i.e. budgeting, and what else it needs to consider, and why are we pushing that date out, and how does that impact on other processes. So they're not questions that we're qualified to answer. As the collators of the report, whilst Mary worked individually with each ELT member, I guess we can only indicate so far with our hand on our heart as to understanding what that is about. So we're more than happy to indicate what those questions are, speak with the general managers and bring those questions back to a general meeting or whichever forum you like, to get that clarity and get this document right going forward. That's it. That's the intent of this. So let's get it right.
Because I would imagine that the next item sort of relates back into that, the Lockington road users group. They would be feeding information back into the rural road network as well. So
that's correct.
On the review, I'm a bit with Councillor McIndoe on this. How do you review the demand on maintenance work? Because that changes so much. You know, your capital work that you've got planned, you should know the demand on that because that's planned. But maintenance is.
It comes back to the asset management.
Yeah, that's right, but
You know, where you need to resheet, where you need to do work on that maintenance or general maintenance, that relates back to the asset management. So, and some of that information should already be there with some of the work they've done in, you know, the NDRRA work they did as far as survey work, that work will be there, but I said correlating it all together. Which is what.
questions.
Maybe we just need from Gerard an understanding of what it is that's actually, those words is required from Gerard. What do those words telling him to do and what's he expected to deliver? Because it just seems a bit funny, that one. So let's hold that one out.
I mean, it's next week balls with that, but I mean, it's coming to December. They're not going to have that. They're not going to get people for that road users group.
So, yeah, 2.4.7 was to cooperate and foster support for road user groups across the region to discuss and progress road-specific initiatives through direct involvement with the infrastructure department. The measure was to support existing road user groups, and the target was December 2016. Lockington Road User Group has been formed. The decision to form an additional group for Treeswell was not supported in light of the existing entity. Capella Road User Group was to be progressed in February, hence the request for the target to be extended to March 2017. So again, hold over that for discussion further.
No,
Just
approval.
The discussion around the previous one, going to extend that out.
Yes.
But if we extend that out to March, we should have the other sorted.
Right. Okay. Happy to continue. 2.4.9, where the opportunity presents or the entity impact arises, which make an impression upon council and community assets, council will collaborate with the entity to mitigate these impacts or improve upon assets. The identify entity responsible for potential impact and develop and negotiate with the entity using an infrastructure agreement as a relevant mechanism. This is an ongoing activity, and it's an additional activity that's been brought forward from the 2015-16 operational plan. Mary, can you shed any light on that one for us? Because I didn't quite get a grasp on that one when I read it myself, and I don't know if anyone else quite understands it, but I certainly don't.
Through the chair, Google Translator. My understanding is in the previous plan there was a discussion about basically recovering costs from developers when they damage council infrastructures such as road and different facilities that council would then have to repair if the infrastructure developer wasn't involved in a formal agreement. And the discussion at the last standing committee was, well, we should aggressively and actively pursue developers for the costs rather than bear the cost on council. So Gerard and Jason Akers worked on using back to the discussion from the live stream of the previous standing committee to get an understanding of what exactly was required, because it was a request to, this must be included. So this was the wording they came up with, and the only way they can't put a number on how many developers they can target, because you can't predict how many developments are going to occur in a year. So his rationale behind this particular one was that it would just be ongoing, and each time a development was taking place, they would actively engage with the developers to look at the agreement. So it is, I think they struggled to understand what to capture in an operational plan for this purpose, and that it was more of a business management process really, but the feedback from the last governance standing committee was that it must be included in the operational plan, so that's their attempt at that.
Okay.
It's not asking for anything, it's just one of those things, there's no timeline on it,
It's just going to sit there if the opportunity arises.
Yeah, so essentially, let's say in Q4, potentially each quarter there would be an update and it could simply be 0. Or there may be by the end of the financial year, there may have been an agreement put in place with one developer or 2 developers, which is why there is no concrete number, so ongoing, but at the end of each year, you'd be able to look back and see if any infrastructure agreements were entered into.
I'm not sure with any of you, but I think we could look at potentially rewording that to get a better understanding of what is required there.
Mary Eldon and know what the hell it meant.
I understood from the explanation, so I would recommend that we just massage the wording a little to articulate something along the lines of recovering costs from developers through infrastructure agreement arrangements where appropriate, to articulate that a little more clearly.
Yeah, we either put it in a policy or a contract, or
I think they are captured at that level, but it's just trying to capture it on a quarterly reporting basis for the up plan.
So
can we put that in an audit process where it's, you get it out of here?
yeah,
Put it in an audit process, if we want it recorded and reported on, and get it out of here.
I guess the other side is it's the
It's not operational, that's recording and reporting.
yeah.
So,
well, with it in the operational plan, it's coming back in front of us regularly. That's and I see it as one of those things is where do you put it? They want it seen, but it just sits there until there's something on it. So yeah, I'm not sure on that. More questions need to be asked because it's come from 15-16. It's probably not Gerard's wording, and so.
And that was why I think we spent possibly an hour or 2 hours working on trying to capture this activity. And they went back to replay the conversations to try and get a clear understanding as to what council and the standing committee were trying to have included in the upland, because it was a definite must include. So I think if it's something we can clarify, maybe similar to the one above, having our conversation with Gerard and the governance team, and the Mary Ann and Gerard can rework the.
I'm happy to work with Gerard on maybe clarifying that item. Left in there, but to get some clarification to make that easily understandable, not only for us, but for the public reading the document. Right?
So it probably needs to be a little bit open to cover many situations.
Yes, yeah,
But like I said, it could be cleared up.
yeah. All right, 2.5.5, develop and improve data collection and systems integration for asset management. The request here is to extend the target date to June 2017. The reason for that is due to resource constraints and competing priorities. So again, just that re-evaluation of everything that's going on, the inability to deliver by December. We'd like that pushed out to June. That's from Corporate Services, so Jason Bradshaw. Happy to amend that date.
it's a big one.
It is, and he's got a lot with the re-evaluation of software happening at the moment as well. The next one, 2.5.6, develop and implement the council's geographic information system strategy. Again, extend the target date to March 2017. Resource constraints, we've had a few staff movements in that area, and resources are down presently. So I'd assume that's the reasoning behind the request for that extension as well. So you're happy to support the move to March 2017 of that date? Yes. 2.5.7, undertake pilot of RAV, so remote aerial vehicles for mobile asset data collection. Request from the GM of Corporate Services to extend that date to June 2017, presently 15% complete. Confirming the scope of work through LGIS for the pilot work to be completed in that area. So moving from December 2016 to June 2017. Do you support that date? Yeah.
It's, we've had staff movement, we've lack of resources. What needs to happen? You know, just because someone leaves or someone, are we filling positions? Are we not got the right people? Is there an overarching concern there why aren't we keeping our people?
I think it's a
Is the demand
combination.
too high? Do we need more people?
It's a high workload, I think, across the board. I think it's a combination of all of what you've just mentioned there. And I guess when we lose people, it is difficult to recruit you, and you've got that overlap of time of when you do actually recruit somebody. It's onboarding them, getting them up to speed with our systems and how things work, and then onboarding them with the projects that they're responsible with as well. So you do have quite a few months before they're actually functioning in that role well as well. So if you do have somebody leaves, and when people leave, they give 1-2 weeks notice. So by the time you go out to recruit, you've got that vacancy, you've got that work sitting dormant or other people trying to pick that work up. And traditionally this time of year, coming into December, January, that's your high turnover time as well.
And you're not going to get a replacement until mid-January, early February at early. So you're 8-10 weeks
So
without people, and all of a sudden, March, we didn't get them, and they didn't come here till 2nd of February, so I need to, and yet some of this stuff's fairly critical.
it is
Or crucial, not so much critical, we will get by, but you need some of this stuff
I think
completed.
that there have been some temporary arrangements put in place in some of these areas. So as with mine, I've had some resourcing issues myself. So I've had to bring in a temporary logo resource to try and get on top of my backlog as well. So I think that is happening across the board in some of these areas to try and stop fill those gaps and manage. But it certainly, helps a little, but doesn't.
I think some of it is, as we go through this, we very clearly identify how much of this is so important to what we're trying to achieve. We've got 3-4 years as far as councillors go. We've got some deadlines. We know we're going to have a lot of work come up that pushes other stuff back that isn't even on this sheet yet. And if we don't start nailing some of this, it just keeps getting put back, and it becomes stale or whatever. And this is some of this stuff's so important. I just had a quick look through at some other corporate. If we just target one area and get them happening, it will alleviate those key people in their areas. So it may come down to talking to the CEO in regards to getting some of this stuff tidied up. We come into a flood situation, it's put back.
Yep.
When those things happen, we get orange shirts, if I can say that, if that's the right thing. But we get men on the ground, we get ladies on the ground, we get in, we tidy up, we get it back up to speed. We're getting behind here, and we need to do the same thing. We need to get it up to speed, and sometimes clear the deck. And to me, some of this stuff's really important. So can we just keep an eye on that as we go through? Let's see if we need to get some locums in or something and be target specific in
these areas to get some bodies on the ground to make these things happen. So, do we want to make that part of a broader conversation with everyone in the room? Or do we want to go through this, continue going through this, and then take this back to the broader group and say, we've been through this, these are the concerns that we do have, we need to have that broader conversation.
Review request, 90% of them are asking for an extension of 3 months.
That's correct.
Now, we're taking measures now to get these meetings in line to alleviate some of these pressures, yes, but that's not just the answer. That's not going to free up things that are sitting at 15% and 20% as of date, and we're halfway through the year.
Yes.
You know, we've got, you know, let's get them to get some stuff. So,
Yeah, no?
sorry, Chair.
I'll be
No
sorry.
need to be sorry at all, no? Conversations to have.
Yeah, there's,
Conversations to have. So, you know, as an outcome from this, you know, we can certainly work through and then take back to the broader council group some recommendations, and those recommendations may be to have those broader conversations from the leadership and government standing committee with the concerns of, you know, do we need some temporary resources in some particular
How many
areas?
staff is that area down? Is it, for example, just that area, corporate services, how many people down? 200?
I think there was 2 or 3 in the asset management area.
Yeah,
What was that?
in the asset management.
3.
Right, yeah, in the asset management area, there was a relocation of the GIS officer. That position was filled maybe 5-6 weeks ago. So there was a downtime there where there was no one there to take over all that work. So they tried to manage their resources with a wider, as you mentioned earlier, the flood mitigation works and the other GIS officer trying to literally keep the department on track there. And then they're down their asset accountant, which works primarily on with assets and the asset management planning side of things, and the asset coordinator. So the asset management team have taken a big hit, and as Councillor Burberhome indicated earlier, and there are a huge number of priority significant projects that have been tasked to that department. So trying to, I suppose, be very realistic in achievability and timeframes. These lines were thoroughly examined, and it is a concern, obviously, to the team because they realise the significance of them, and they feel with the rewording and the prioritisation, they can still be achieved, because we have all asked in the governance department quite detailed questions when you map 205 graphs based on percentages and colours, and you read the comments line by line to prepare your Q1 report. Doing the review at the same time made it extremely fresh for the frank conversations at that level to be had, to see 2 + 2 + 2. Well, are we all adding up to being honest in the percentages, to still have as many achieved at 100% by June? So they are definitely struggling, but I do believe their answers and the information that that department have provided are honest and accurate.
Because it's a concern, you know, where does that percentage come from? It's a verbal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be sitting at 2%.
And that's something, again, through the chair, that Lila indicated at the Q1 review. It is a statistic that the governance department, as well, have put in to try and help track and monitor. And it is, in this case, like you indicating, a personal interpretation of progress, but similar with risk assessments. Only the person doing that project can genuinely give you a percentage, and that's where, if the data is not provided at the start, it's not something that can be guesstimated. It has to go back to the owner. So they will review what work they have conducted in Q1 to see And I think a lot of the percentages are conservative, and they've erred on that side rather than to then fall behind. So they are conservative. It's percentages that have been allocated by the responsible business owner.
And through the chair, I would like to make commentary, I guess, in relation to what I've experienced, and when I went out to try and find a temporary resource to get over the backlog that I had, that was difficult in itself as well, to get somebody that was skilled in the areas that I needed across workplace health and safety and governance. Whilst I had the green light from the CEO to find somebody, it still took me 6 weeks to get somebody. So you've got those lags as well. So whilst you stick your hand up and you go, I need help, finding that resource, getting them, relocating them here to get on the ground and help you, you know, it's not that easy either. So I would imagine in that asset area too, that would be a difficult thing to fulfil the position in the short term as well.
Regardless of whether it's your own staff or for a better word, contractor coming in, it's whoever's coming in, they've still got to get up to speed.
You've still got that learning curve
time
to get them up to speed with our systems and, you know, to fulfil the role. Yeah. So I think we can all plan and we can all try and backfill, and you know, you can't plan for some things, unfortunately. You know, it's one of those things that we do the best we can with this. But understand that there is concern.
I mean, those issues aside, we're aware of those. Are you still happy to push through this?
Yes.
There's a lot of, I mean, those questions that come around being short in areas.
Yeah, the resources.
We could still have these problems later on if those positions aren't.
And yeah, bearing in mind we're coming into Christmas leave period as well. I'm sure that's factored into the requests here for the timeframes to move out as well, that we will have some staff off on leave over this time. All right, we have to keep moving.
So 2.5.8, was that, are we accepting that, or what are we doing with that one?
We're on 2.5.8 now,
Yeah.
I think. Implementation of GPS monitoring into plant and vehicles to achieve efficiency and safety gains and reduce operating costs. Again, an extension of the target date to March 2017 from December. This was due to changes in staff in the company supporting Navman to council, so not one of ours, this one.
Contractor, this one.
Contractor, so happy to support that one.
Yes.
But I know a bit about that one.
Do you?
Yeah. Why aren't we putting more pressure on those guys
Right, okay.
to get the support we need? I mean, we put this in, we spent the money on it. Why aren't we getting our people trained? And I know that they say there that due to changes in staff in their company, but if they've committed that to us, that's not our problem.
They should be.
We need the pressure on. We push this out another 3 months. It's another 3 months that we're not getting to get data on our system that is a way of improving our efficiencies and hopefully reducing some costs. If anything, some more questions around that.
We've asked for a 6-month one. They haven't been in 6 months yet, come December. They going in June, did they? Prior to June.
So the installation of them, very smooth. Guys come out and it all went well.
Except the ones that they put in vehicles that haven't moved since.
Well, that wasn't a problem because they were easy to put them in. The problem is in the support and the training. But that we can't, I just can't accept that we've got to make that our problem. And if they're that small a company, they don't have the staff to come and train us, why are we dealing with them? Which I know that they're not, but I just don't think that we should be pushing that out. I think we should be asking some more questions on the issues as to why we have to extend that out and wait for training or whatever it is to get those issues sorted, because that is a tool that will be very useful to council to review some of those actions.
So you know that we're
Let's
going
go
to
back
ask,
to Gerard and get him to put the screws on.
that one's Jason as well.
Well, it's Jason, but it's
No, it's just-
I've been talking to Margaret.
Great. All right, so are we happy to push it out to March, but go back and have the conversations?
No.
No, we're not happy to push it out to March.
I'd like to have the conversation and try and keep it on track.
You just want Jason to email?
No, that's okay. For councils, we might take how long have we got?
We've got 14.
My computer is going to restart in 13 minutes and I can't stop it, so we might have to have a break in 13 minutes, unfortunately.
Technology is wonderful.
We'll aim for 10. Do you accept that, councillor?
Can we just keep progressing?
Yeah,
I'd
we'll
like to
get
get
this-
past
we'll get
page
this-
one
I
at
like
least.
it, part six. Let's go, let's go.
Keep going, right, okay. 3.2.2, formally endorse tourism as a priority growth industry in the Central Highlands. Sandstone Wilderness Destination Marketing Plan implemented. Now, this is one in my area. I'm requesting to actually change the measure in this because it is Sandstone Wilderness Destination Marketing Plan is actually part of a bigger plan. So it's not written well. So what I'm requesting is that we change that to quarterly reporting on the Central Highlands Marketing Plan, and we request that that's a quarterly report. So that will be reporting on everything within the Central Highlands Marketing Plan, not just the Sandstone Wilderness Destination Marketing. It will be on the whole marketing strategy. So happy with that. 3.3.1, provide and maintain affordable housing within Central Highlands Council region. I'd just like to move out that date to June 2017 from July 2016. We're working with the housing company presently. The model that had been developed has been adopted, but we are working with Isaac Housing Trust on what is happening in that affordable housing space. So we had a meeting this week and we are progressing there, but there is a lot happening in that space, but I think it will take us a little while to formulate how we progress the strategic action plan and model that we have in place. So I think we will take through to June 2017 to really action that model. So,
And it's trying to coordinate getting everyone together
yes.
to get that in place.
Yes, and so I believe we do need to 2017 to do that. So happy to support
Being
that.
involved in that.
Being involved in that, Chair. 4.1.3, develop amendment of the planning scheme to incorporate economic development Queensland, Blackwater priority development areas. This is General Manager Communities. He's requesting a change of the target from 50 to 25%. There's been a delay in the planning amendment progress. He's wanting that to avoid duplication of the work. So the work on the Planning Amendment Act is due to commence in January 2017. So he's requesting that the actual target be changed for 25% completion rather than 50% completion. Is that correct, Mary?
Yes, this was worked through with the manager of planning and environment. Yeah, so realistically, given the, I suppose, the hierarchy of legislation and then the changes, considering it's now going to be January, you then just have 6 months essentially to complete this activity. So the estimate then was, well, if 50% was estimated at the start of the year, possibly 25% would
Be achieved.
yeah, hopefully would be achieved.
So that's dictated by the delay in the release of the Planning Amendment Act.
Yeah, again, outside the control of council employees in terms that they could essentially do the project, but it would
The
be
resourcing of it would be.
well, they would have to literally redo it all again, so you're defeating the purpose and your resources.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Happy to support that.
Yeah.
You can't control it.
At the start, it was 50% of doing the job.
Yep.
Now we're 25% of doing the job. Doesn't matter. Job's not done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what they're doing is, I guess what they're saying is the legislation that they would, working towards, is not being released when it was, so that's being pushed out to January 2017. So rather than trying to do it against the legislation that's in presently and then redo the work when the amendment's released in 2017, they won't start on the current legislation, they'll do it on the amended legislation from January. But they'll only get 25% complete by that due date, rather than 50%.
I've got no problems, but regardless of whether it's, you still need to be developing that planning scheme for incorporating that Blackwater area anyway, regardless of whether it's there at the time or not, eventually come back to us. It's still got to be developed. What I'm saying is this has got to be developed anyway.
Regardless of the amendments, yeah.
Yeah.
Tick that off.
Well,
We
the
might,
pressure will come on when the pressure comes on. Let's just let it roll.
we might take a break.
And just quick restart.
We've still got 2 minutes. We can get through another two.
Stress
Yes.
All right, welcome back.
Right. If I could just take us back before we go forward. That's what you want to hear. 3.2.2, when we talk about the Sandstone Wilderness Destination Marketing Plan, if I could request that we change that target to 3, because as was pointed out to me, by Mary, we only will have 3 quarters left to report on that, not 4. So I'm setting myself up for failure here. So request to have quarterly reporting, but there are only 3 of those left for me to achieve. So that's all okay.
No problem.
Thank you. All right, on to page 2. 4.2.1, deliver improved automation within authority for development assessments. The request here is to change the target date to March 2016. 2016. All right, time warp. Okay, March 2017, my apologies. The specialist consultant is now available to assist with those projects. So that was an external influence there that's affected those time frames. The next one, 4.1.2, is a request for wording change in the activity itself, which currently reads deliver improved automation within authority for development assessments. The requested changes deliver improved automation for development assessments. So removing the within authority, given that we are potentially changing to a different system. I'm just mindful that the one above says within authority, whether we should be requesting a change for that as well.
Yeah.
So we make that alteration across the 2 of those to make it a generic automation process. So if you're happy with both of those. 4.2.2, assessment of compliance with permit conditions by approved development applications. Again, a request to change the target date to June 2017. I think it actually says 2016 there, not me reading it incorrectly. From September 2016. Difficulties in recruiting a compliance officer there presently, so back to our conversations earlier there. We're happy to support that change in date.
Yes.
Yes.
We can do that.
4.4.2, flood inundation mapping and investigations available online. Target date extension request to June 2017. Again, scoping has been prepared, implementation not yet commenced, and we did speak earlier about some issues on resourcing. I guess that has a bit of overlap, even though that's sitting in infrastructure and utilities, some overlap in the GIS resourcing matters in corporate services, I would imagine there.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Any issues with that extension? So that's the flood inundation mapping coming across into the GIS system.
All
So
right.
the
No, I
logo
was
of
just
that.
wondering because the
Yep.
the inundation map's already
Correct.
there. It's just incorporated.
Yeah, through the chair, exactly, Councillor Rubicon. It is a overlap with the resourcing issue in the GIS section. So the infrastructure team are progressing the mapping information, but to make it publicly available onto that GIS system internally, just that slight gap due to resourcing and technical side of things, so that's a
So also utilising it in planning as well with. Yeah, no worries.
Okay with that. 4.4.3, undertake an all hazards risk management study and develop a risk treatment mitigation options register for whole of council. The request here from the General Manager of Infrastructure is to reword the activity to read undertake all hazards risk identification register and scope of work for mitigation options, and also to reword the measure to read study undertaken, risk identified and documented. So the target date's still June 2017. The work is not commenced. Any comments on that?
Yeah, we're just changing the words. Doesn't change what our intent was right at the start. We're still sitting at 0, so
Bring that one back for some
it's either an
discussion.
easy one, we've been putting it back, and we'll just rip it through in June. It's not an easy task. I would like to see some progress on it.
Mary, do you have any commentary on that? Is that related to the,
So this was, because they originally did a whole of council and it was assigned to infrastructure, there was a lot of confusion as to what hazards and mitigation for whole of council, what exactly that meant. So my understanding is, and I can again confirm with Gerard, my understanding is that this is in relation to council's key infrastructure and assets that need mitigation strategies for them. So for example, water and storage, and it's further down again where in the Disaster Management Act there is an actual definition of key assets, and they condemn to water, sewerage, and electricity, and it's in terms of the supply of electricity to those assets, so that we have, for example, a backup generator, understanding that we don't have to have mitigation options for electricity, but for the supply. So Gerard was looking at the whole picture of that specific risk further down, and this one here was to make it very clear of what the scope was and that it was simply for those mitigation options, not.
Shouldn't there already be a study already there? Because during this is going back 3 years ago, where we wanted to identify our emergency services, essential services. Well, that work was already done. So from that study, I know some of the sewage and water was upgraded because of that.
Yeah, exactly. So the first part of, I suppose, the identification project has been done. Now it's to move from just identification to doing the whole encompassing of the mitigation strategy. So yes, definitely with discussions with both Glenn Bell and Peter Manning in the water side, Gerard is confident that it is an achievable project despite the honest statistical stat on 0% there. So it is definitely something that can be achieved, but to just keep it that more realistic on what we're delivering.
Okay.
right, so sorry, where were we in relation to that?
4.4.3.
Yes, no worries.
So we're right, yep, all right,
Wording change.
wording change. The next one, 4.4.3 as well. I'm assuming that activity word request is the same across that one, so undertake an all hazards risk identification register and scope of works for mitigation, so only relevant to the key activity for that one. The report submission to council for endorsement still June 2017. So similar to above, just the first column to be changed. 4.4.4, investigate self-funding insurance options of council essential assets for flooding events. An option paper to be presented to council by June 2017. This is an additional activity that's been brought over from the 2015-16 operational plan. So you'll recall from the previous presentations on the op plan, there were some outstanding activities that hadn't been carried across. This would have been one of those that's now been incorporated. So
But it was an additional to some of that stuff that was brought over, wasn't it? Or was this an item on the 15-16?
And through the chair, yes, this was an item on the 15-16 operational plan, but it was a little bit vague on what exactly self-funding options were to be explored, and the discussion around all the various, if it's should be something for all of council. I think if it's council assets, such as what we have insurance on, and do we look at our asset schedules that we provide to the insurance provider and look at removing some items from that, or was it the definition of community flooding, or was it the definition of assets? So it was an extremely difficult one to achieve last year without the clarification. So with the Gerard now being part of the team, looking at reworking that, it again comes back to the discussion we just had about essential assets. So there's now a clear definition of what we are looking at, so it will be for the essential assets. So it's very clear now.
Right, so I have that. 4.4.5, identify mitigation strategies for CHRC essential assets as identified in the Disaster Management Act. Again, the same there, Mary, brought across from the previous 15-16 operational plan.
Yeah.
Project scope for mitigation strategies completed for water and sewer assets, including electricity supply to these assets, to be completed by June 2017. Okay to incorporate? 5.1.2, continue to develop Council's website as a source of information and means of online service delivery. This is one of, in my area, and I'm requesting a rewording of the measure to report on the maintenance and performance of the website. This is tied up a bit again with the renewal of the corporate system. So we can only go so far with what we're doing in that space. So I believe a more appropriate measure would be reporting on what we're doing in that space and the maintenance and performance of the website on a quarterly basis. So if you're happy with that, rather than
With your percentage there, your 25%, is that necessary? It's just going to be one of those ongoing
it is an
things.
ongoing.
You're never going to achieve 100%.
No, because it is ongoing. Yes, you're correct.
So
I guess the 25% is quarterly, so if I'm reporting quarterly on that, 25% the first quarter, 50%, it's more the quarterly that I'm meeting the obligation to report on. 5.1.3, implement social media strategy recommendations. I'm requesting a change to this more for clarification purposes as well. What was in there was all relevant social media strategies are implemented, and there was a target there of 5. That was relevant to social media strategies from a presentation that the Highlanders LGMA presentation had been done. They're pretty much incorporated presently in what's happening. What is on the agenda at the moment is a new social media strategies being developed. So the recommendation here is that we finalise and implement that social media strategy. So that's a recommended change to the activity, that social media activity is adopted, and the target date is December 2016. So that's well and truly advanced and should be before council and hopefully adopted by December and implemented. So those 5 target strategies have been met under the Highlanders presentation. So it's basically rejigging that, so we're still committed to meeting those social media obligations. So if you're happy for that rewording and change in targets. Yes. 5.1.4, provide community education programs. Again, a bit of a clarification here. 4 community education programs have been undertaken already, so that target's been met. So they were the garage sale, trail, flying foxes, ranger inspection programs, and change to waste management arrangements. So I think a more important measure would be to report quarterly on what education programs are run across council. So rather than trying to invent a campaign to meet a quarterly target, it is about reporting on and or other campaigns that are run at any specific time. There may be quarters where there aren't any campaigns that are required, and there may be other quarters that there are a substantial number of campaigns. So it's more on reporting and updating and ensuring that the success of what campaigns are required.
How do you gauge whether a campaign's been successful or not?
I guess it's the engagement through the social media, any commentary, any feedback. So Andrea has a monthly report which indicates the engagement through those various mechanisms that she monitors.
Okay.
Yeah.
5.1.5, implementation of regional communications strategy. Again, a report quarterly on the number of posts to Facebook for council events and activities, rather than a specified number of Facebook posts. Again, very difficult to set a target for achieving a specific number of Facebook posts. Andrea again tracks all of these statistics, and it'll be the emu that's running down the street that trends the highest, rather than anything that we target to try and get the responses to. So although it is promising to note that our recent apprenticeship advertising through Facebook is having a lot of success. So it's more about reporting and understanding what we're having success in, rather than setting arbitrary targets. So I think that's the importance here. What we're trying to capture is the meaningful reporting. So if we're happy with that.
Yes.
Again, the next one, 5.1.5, same regional communications strategy. Same sort of thing we're trying to do here, rather than increase the engagement in social media activity by a certain amount. It's about capturing the different trends in that social media and what's affecting those things. So if there's, flooding events, the heavy rainfalls, we certainly peak in those times. Anything in particular that's affecting those trends, and reporting on those things, rather than just trying to meet a mandatory target. So changing to track engagement of social media activity, to provide detailed reporting on target audience and popular hits, and requesting target change to June 2017. So that's a continual monitoring that we'll do in that space. 5.1.5 again, same thing with the number of media releases. What we're looking at doing is just clarifying that a bit. We had 36 in the 2016-17 target. We'd like to change that to 12 media releases a month. We left that 36 there, we're only looking at 3 per month. So we'd like to sort of clarify a target in that space. That. 5.1.5 again. Similar, if you want to increase the target, that's fine. What we're doing here is 2 mayoral messages prepared each month. So that's in and part of our regional communication strategy. So the number of mayoral messages prepared for CQ News. So if we could request that increased target to 24. Yeah.
That's,
It's already happening.
that'll vary on what's there to comment on as well. So.
Yeah, I think it's fairly set now with Andrea and the Mayor, each twice a month that that column goes in. And, what's relevant for that fortnight is some commentary on that. Okay, 5.2.1, participate in community and services agency meetings, i.e. community services interagency and community advisory networks. This is under the General Manager of Communities. There's a request there for the activity to be reworded to number of agencies participating in meetings and forums facilitated by Council's Community Development Team, and we're looking at revising the target there then to 13 from 6. So a couple of changes there. You happy for that? So clarification of wording and target increased from 6 to 13. I think that's probably based, Mary, a commentary on that would be around the CRGs, is that correct?
This is, like you indicated earlier, the interagency, so meeting with the community groups such as Anglicare and the various transport initiatives that are around the place. And the original wording was that council would essentially incorporate their decisions into council policy. So the robust discussion took place as to what classifies as a decision from an interagency group. They're more about doing policies and community supports and different programs of events. So to incorporate a decision from that group into a council-specific policy was very unclear as to how that could be achievable. But a more realistic and tangible thing to measure would be how much council are supporting these groups and the number of projects they do at each meeting. So they have a large number of meetings throughout the Shire, not just based in Emerald. So they've got Blackwater, Capella and Emerald, and the number of agencies can vary greatly. Over 20 can participate in more meetings. So the average target group was that 13 people agencies would turn up to each meeting, and that council could then report on the number of events they facilitated to have that community resource supported.
So 13 agencies attending a particular meeting?
Yes.
Right.
So just what is it coming up not commenced? Like CRGs have been running, agencies are a part of that, or are the agencies associated with CRGs not recognised as agencies? Or they're just not nominated or updated yet? What's the whole?
So again, through the chair, it's the actual measure, so the number of agency decisions incorporated into council policy and direction. So we have not developed a council policy or a council direction in relation to, say, supporting Anglicare or supporting a community event, because normally council decisions can only direct what council's functions are. So it's completely separate to the community reference group. So there's an awful lot of work being done with both the 13 community reference groups and the various community support functions, and it just wasn't being measured correctly. So while the work is commenced, as you pointed out, and quite advanced, changing council policies and decisions hasn't commenced because it's not feasible. So that's why, again, very honest reporting here. It is at zero and it has not commenced because it's not something we can commit. That's where, again, it was a very hard review on what we have in the operational plan and whether or not we will achieve that. So that's what that connection there is.
So are we happy to make the change based on that?
Well, it's a good idea. I think to move forward, we need to make that change and get started.
Right. Okay, 6.1.1. This is General Manager of Commercial Services. The current activity, there's a request to reword or change the key activity from investigate the mitigation of general aviation tarmac area non-conformances at Emerald Airport to read investigate and design non-conformance mitigation solutions for general aviation tarmac area at Emerald Airport. So just a couple of words added there to give some clarity to what's required there. You happy for that? Investigate and design? Yes?
Yeah.
So it's committing to a bit more than just investigating the mitigation. It's investigating and designing non-conformance for mitigation solutions. 6.1.2, General Manager of Commercial Services again. It's about investigation of environmental initiatives and a commitment there being made at Business Review 1 for requesting $10,000 for external assessment. all, so I guess she's just wanting to indicate that there was no money in the budget for that. Part of this review was to consider whether there was budgetary allocation, and I guess that's indicating that there was the need for that to happen in budget review 1. So we're happy to endorse that particular item. Request for the additional budget of $10,000 to ensure that the investigation of environmental initiatives was funded.
Problems just got to be done. Shouldn't that come through a separate motion through a committee or through council?
It needs to be referred through.
So refer that through the budget process, which I'm sure she would have done additionally as part of the budget review process. But I guess part of this review was to ensure that all of what was in the operational plan had budgetary consideration against it. And I guess this is highlighted as one that wasn't, so that's been flagged here for consideration as well. 6.1.4, improved governance for sale yards operations. This is a request to change the target date from the General Manager Commercial Services to December 2016 from September. The draft documentation has been prepared and an agent review is currently being conducted. So that's in relation to arrangements with sale yard users, agents permits being finalised. Having to move that out to December.
Yes.
Passed. 80% complete, so we're nearly there. 6.1.5, improved livestock feeding practices at Emerald Sale Yards. Request for an extension date from October 2016 through to June 2017. It's 50% completed. 4 racks have been purchased and installed. Progressive acquisition through the operational budget. So budget there. Just need that extension through to June 2017. Happy to support that.
So we budgeted for it, for the whole lot?
Well, I imagine so.
It says there that we budgeted for it. Is there a problem with the supplier? Is there a problem is it lost on transport? Because if we budgeted for it, we budget in quarterly segments.
They've been purchased and installed.
Sorry?
4 racks
Some
have
of
been
them.
purchased and installed. This is a progressive acquisition through the operational budget.
So maybe it's really all on target. Yeah, we said we buy 2 every quarter.
Maybe that,
Maybe they're doing certain sections at a
It just seems
time.
a weird one there.
I'm
That's all.
not sure.
That's why we're extending to June, because, you know, we've said October, surely we could have purchased all of them by October if we budgeted for it. What's the hold up? Is it a purchase order or a purchase request?
Sorry, I'll hand over to Mary since she worked at it with the
Through the chair
GMs.
again, I believe it is that it was a activity, and again, it's back to, I suppose, the process where the operational plan and the budget may not have been as dovetailed as ideal. So this was an activity that was undertaken and prioritised as something that we need to do this financial year. So there was a budget allocation available, so 4 racks have been purchased, but the number we require is more significant. But to do it correctly, we do need to go through BR1 review. So the requests are in there, but technically, obviously, that has to go through council and be adopted. So we cannot say that they all have been purchased or we can't purchase them all. So it's literally following the process in the correct order.
So there's more than 4 racks to be installed, and we have money in the budget for 4. We've requested more, so it's progressively working on acquiring the additional ones to complete that. There's been budget review request for additional funding to complete that project.
Purchase, yeah, that's my understanding. So we had.
I understand. Now, there you go.
Can we just ensure that the 4 that are there are quite suitable before we buy any more? And make sure, you know, just speak with whoever and make sure they're doing the job. And if we need to amend the design or something like that.
Current racks. Feed that back to the relevant GM. 6.1.6, improve communications to sale yards stakeholders. Now, this is the deleted request measure. So the General Manager of Commercial Services has requested removal of this measure from the operational plan on the basis that it was a request for an e-news to be developed and circulated. The commentary there is around Emerald Sale Yards Coordination Committee have advised stakeholders already receive a number of emails and would like an alternative communication avenue to be developed. You will notice in the next couple of items which relate to improved communications at the sale yards with stakeholders. There's a communication notice board installation and a request for an additional measure of stakeholder workshops to be held. So I'm assuming that those two will be covering off on those additional methods of communications that the committee have talked about, not wanting the e-news. So the notice board's installed and in use and was completed in Q1, and the additional measure of stakeholder workshop to be held in March. Are we happy for those to be considered and that measure to be deleted?
Delete 616.
Yes, delete 616, the first one. The second one is completed, and the third one is an allocation of a new measure, an additional measure of having a stakeholder workshop in March 2017. So improved communications to sale yard stakeholders, and the activity measure will be holding a stakeholder workshop, and the target date will be March 2017 as an additional measure for the GM of Commercial Services to achieve. So whilst we're taking the e-news one out, we're putting another one in. Happy with that? Yep. 6.1.7, again, General Manager of Commercial Services, improve financial sustainability at Emerald Sale Yards, labour cost management analysis. It was due to be completed by November 2016. There's a request for a target date to be moved to December 2016 for that item. It's only 5% complete. So I'm assuming she's getting some assistance to have that completed by December. 6.1.8 is also General Manager of Commercial Services, identify projects to enhance facilities at Emerald Sale Yard to improve efficiency of cattle throughput, animal welfare and work and safety for work health and safety for workers, about developing a feasibility and business case. So there's an additional, this is an additional activity that's been brought over from 15-16, is that correct, Mary?
Correct. It's a rewording to try and encompass the request to enhance the existing facility, but also the feasibility and the business cases for the discussion around identifying 3 priority alternative sites going forward with the possible relocation. So that was the wording that was created to capture that.
It's funny, identify projects to enhance facilities. In the short time I've been here, we've pumped money into B-double extensions, we've pumped money into feeders.
Yep.
Is this all those things off the projects and enhancement plan? And we just add lib, because surely there's an existing plan in there for this place.
So my understanding from the last standing committee where Councillor Rolfe raised the questions about the B-double ramps and that. So this was all part of the discussion and work with the CEO and councillors to try and capture that. So it's not wanting to take away from what we have in place right now and to continue to enhance and improve it so there's no risk to the public and the workers of the facility there. And then whether or not, I'm not sure if your question is whether or not they can be relocated, because that was something that was indicated previously as well. So I would imagine the plan for the current facility is there, but it's to try and, I suppose, keep that plan progressing along, with also bearing in mind the potential relocation.
Sorry, Mary, but it's a carryover from 15-16
So
operational plan.
yeah.
we got it due on the 16th of June 2017. So we're taking 2 years, and that's if it wasn't a carryover from 14-15. But it's taking 2 years to work out what we want.
Yes.
But yet we go and do all this stuff.
So,
It's a bit of double dutch.
it's,
Honestly, it's.
I agree, like, I think it's a bit like.
Where is the current plan?
Yeah.
And then where's the additions from there?
Yeah.
Surely we can amend the operational plan for the sale yards a little quicker than 2 years.
So just again through the chair, is trying to incorporate the existing plan for the sale yards and functionality of that to the bigger project with CHDC at the agro precinct, and trying to get everything in line with that. So it's trying to, again, dovetail or utilise the various plans that are in place to make sure they all, I suppose, link together and there's not that duplication of work there. So while not allowing the facility or asset to deteriorate, where you work health and safety concerns, to maintain a suitable level for the original plan, but also be aware of, I suppose, investment and I suppose portability of future assets to the bigger project. That's my understanding.
I think it's a load of bullshit. But anyway,
Speaking of cattle yards.
sorry?
Speaking of cattle yards.
I'm sorry.
If no-
I'm sorry,
if no-
everyone. But,
Just trying to tie that in.
oh, yeah, heifer dust, I should have said. But look, understand anything that we bolt on to the existing sale yards needs to be unbolted and utilised anywhere, whether it's at someone's property if we want to unsell it or at a future sale yard. But what are we truly trying to do here? Yeah, it says identify projects to enhance facilities at Emerald sale yards to improve efficiency of cattle throughput, animal welfare and work health and safety for workers. We've done it for the last 20 years. We've got a business case or a business plan in place. Why is it sitting in here?
Again, it was the request, and there was quite an intense debate at the last meeting. And I think it was an original request to be removed, not to be carried forward, to the 16-17 plan, which is why it wasn't carried forward at the start of the year. The discussion at the last Leadership and Governance Standing Committee was lively, and it was the direction that it would be carried forward to the 16-17 plan, even though there are business cases in place and a project, I believe, with work health and safety to ensure, as I said earlier, ensure standards are maintained, so that because we may potentially be relocating, we shouldn't, I suppose, deteriorate the standards and the facilities there. So using that background knowledge and the knowledge of what is to come, this was, I guess, what Michelle felt captured the concerns of the standing committee going forward, and their request to look at, I suppose, future feasibilities of the I believe from memory the discussion with the CEO at the meeting was 3 priority areas identified, but obviously it's not to be scoped because again, it's the longer term project.
So the measure of it, like, it just conflicts. The measure of it is the measure, we're going to measure the develop feasibility and business cases. That's the measure of what we're trying to do, which is the whole thing needs. What are we saying behind closed doors? Is that what I don't get something here, because if we're looking to go somewhere else, if we're looking to, let's be open and honest and say what the hell's going on.
Yeah. So by trying to meet the activity, we will explore to meet the 3 concerns, what the projects are, but we'll give you a feasibility in case, business case, so that it can come back to the group and council can decide if it is feasible to undertake these projects given the possibility of relocation. But I don't know, unless it's something that maybe we want to reword in some form out before it's fully adopted.
I think this is one of the ones that we need to have some input from the general manager on, and we can bring this one back, I believe, and have some discussion further on.
It's just too wishy-washy for me.
All right, happy to bring that back. Okay, 6.1.9, optimise production methods to further reduce production costs at Shepton Quarry. What is being requested there is the target to be extended to February 2017. Project is dependent upon internal consultation and processes. We're looking at types of panels selected, scope of works currently under development. So we had December 2016, looking at panel of providers for quarry procurement developed and implemented. So we're looking at an extension of 2 months there. Happy for that? No? 6.1.10, increase product sales at Shepton Quarry. We've got a request for an update of the activity to increase product sales, quarry operations. Is that the activity, Mary, that's been requested, or the measure?
The measure is
Increase.
Yes, so it's going to stay at the 150% increase, or ton. So they are just clarifying, I believe they're essentially taking out the word Shepton because we have
At quarry operations, right, so we're just rewording the activity because we're beyond just the Shepton Quarry now, we're at mobile quarry operations.
So that
Okay,
was just to be correct.
understand now, we happy with that?
Yes.
Okay, 6.1.13, there's a request for a change to the measure from the Commercial Services Manager again, implement and maintain a quality assurance management system at Shepton Quarry, to change measurable to absence of non-conformances through annual surveillance audit rather than just through surveillance audits. So she's wanting to incorporate annual there, and that would be just at Shepton Quarry, which is quality assured rather than the mobile quarries. Right. Happy with that one? Just adding annual in for clarification purposes in that instance.
Approved.
Approved. Okay, 6.1.14, undertake efficiency review on plant usage at Shepton Quarry. We're looking at moving that target date out to March from December. No progress to date is the commentary, awaiting review of commercial accountant position. That has now been approved and progressed. So hence the request to move that out to March 2017. That's an investigation and report on plant hire costing, CHRC versus private, to be provided by the March 2017 timeframe. So she has been with that commercial accountant position for probably a couple of months now. It's a request for that change. Happy to support that? Yes?
There's been some efficiencies in the area. I know some of this work, has been done, the way that they've utilised the equipment, but CH versus private, where did this one originate from and when did it originate? Can anyone help me?
I think from memory again, that it was something that was discussed last year in quite a broad sense in terms of plant and fleet utilisation within CHRC. And the discussion with the quarry manager last year at risk management meetings or in relation to the cost of having particular speciality plant available on site and maintaining that plant to the standard in a downturn, but then also if you switch to private rentals and contractors that bring in their own equipment in peak times when everyone will go to the more financially rewarding contracts. Council have struggled in the past to get equipment that they need, so it's to look at that quite, well, they can look at efficiencies from a staff point of view and do some of this work to increase the general efficiencies to get into the technical accounting level, which is why it's dependent on the accountant position. So what is the cost and of the contractor use and the equipment hire and that side of things compared to using our own and maintaining it.
Does that help or not, or do you want to?
Yeah, I don't have problems with it.
No problem, all right. Councillor McIndoe, okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking so.
So, 6.1.15 is again General Manager Commercial Services. There's just a request on there, change to key activity to develop improved processes for leased land and a change to the measure lease templates developed. It's only 5% progressed. There's been discussions with relevant departments identifying the types of leases. Mary, are you aware of the progression to date on this?
That, again, Chair, these are very accurate percentages, and I think there has been quite a lot of work to clarify what exactly is to be captured and the definition of the different terms of types of council land, so that it's not, we're not just going to have a template for land. They are agreements, legal agreements, and they do require a specific template. So to have the suite in place fully to capture everything, so that when you go to a register of leased land, everything is there and you've got a one-stop shop, is my understanding is what the desired outcome is. So at the moment, while templates have been developed for I suppose the main areas of leases at the moment, we still need to capture the less frequent types of leases we have or could be asked for at a particular point in time. So we want to ensure that it's quite comprehensive when the register is in place.
So there's no request for a change in the time frame there?
Yeah, it's just the wording there.
Yeah, just to be very clear on the fact that we're not just going to have just a lease agreement template. We will have, my understanding is, several lease agreement templates.
So any leased land through
Yes.
council.
Council,
So whether it's council land, council managed, state land.
I think this is where the discussion was taking place between commercial services and communities. It is council land. So I think
Owned land.
that is, I'm not sure what the actual agreement was in the end, but it is very specific on what council land legally is and what they agreed understanding.
Just recently, in the last week, we were looking at stock routes.
Yes, yeah,
Looking at
reserves,
reserves, crown land,
Nature trail. There's a lot.
A lot of that should be picked up in the GIS system eventually, shouldn't it?
The data is there, and of course, through the titles and town planning, you've got a lot of the data of whether it's state-owned land or whether we're the custodians of that area. So I think that's why the priority has been given to, not just for Shane and say we have the project completed, so that when questions come in for particular leases of what we have, it's very clear what we do have. So I think really either Brad or Michelle will be the people to confirm what the definition of council land is. So that's something I can obtain an email to, have emailed to the standing committee.
Hey, you know, we're 5% into it, we still don't know what that land is.
Well, they do, they've clarified, which is why their request is to change the activity for to have it more comprehensive.
So this will take in sporting, no doubt. Is this a part of the sporting open space planning?
I
Don't know.
definitely can't comment on that one because I have not been in at that level. Obviously, just working with them from but it is something, as I say, if I contact Michelle and Brad to provide the definition of council land, then that will help, I suppose, provide the answers, and we can potentially then have a look at maybe for next year's operational plan if we would like to extend that depth. So basically we could look at including this in next year's operational plan to then capture other types of land rather than just council land. If there's a concern about
Well,
the
it's
narrow,
definitely an area that needs to be tidied up because
Yes.
it's a schmozzle.
yes,
And it needs some priority attached to it, going forward with livability
and service level reviews, it's a big project.
and, level playing fields and, throughout the region. Everyone's on a different setup, so it's something that needs a lot of work on it, and it would have been nice to see it further than 5%
Yes.
completed. But, it's still got a time frame there of 1 month from now.
That's
one
in my
week.
concern. It was the,
And I can't see all that being undertaken, but well, if they're happy to stick with December 16, I'm wrapped.
yep, well, there wasn't a request to change it, so we can't change that. We'll ask them for someone else, so we'll have to leave that at this stage and work towards that commitment. But we will get some clarification about what that's covering and bring that back. Okay, 6.1.15 again, General Manager of Commercial Services, again, the change to the key activity to read develop improved processes for leased land, and the change to the measure register of lease agreements for council land developed. The two changes for that, so just clarity of what's to be delivered, and again,
The next two, they're all tied into that one.
they're all tied into that previous one, and again, no change of date, we're already behind target, that was due by September 2016.
So it's a new date attached to that.
There wasn't a requested one. So she's happy to remain behind target going forward.
These.
Might get an update on that for the
Yes,
next.
we might provide an updated
I think it might have just been an oversight
site,
somewhere
I think
that,
so, and potentially I would suggest the December date would have been an oversight as well, as much as we would like to believe that might be completed by
I think we
then, or
might
hope.
get some feedback on some dates.
Yes, I think we'll do that, and the register developed in the next one is looking like 5% complete. The change to activity develop improved processes again, but the measure is data pertaining to leased council land to be included in the corporate register of leases. And the target is the register completed.
Yeah, I'd
There's
like to
no-
see a date on that.
Yes.
Can you attach a date to that? And I understand as more come on board, does it continually change?
It says register.
Yeah, so just to clarify, through the chair, there's quite a number of activities throughout the operational plan where they measure target is completed or adopted or endorsed.
Right.
So essentially when that word is there, it is saying you could potentially take you 12 months to achieve that. So just by the fact it's an annual operational plan, everything in this plan ideally must be achieved by June 30th.
Yeah.
So when it says completed, they can complete it in quarter 1, 2, 3, but it must be completed by quarter 4 if we are not changing the date or changing the target. Does that clarify helps with that?
So should that register complete, because that's going to change all the time.
Yeah.
Like we could
Yeah.
have a new stock route
Yeah.
given to us, or we bypass the lane, so as completed.
Yeah, so it's similar to the fraud risk register or the ERM register or any register. It is to have it completed in that you can then pick it up and you will continuously update it. So I think that's captured, I think somewhere in there that it's a large document as well. So it doesn't mean that it's completed and it's on the shelf and it will constantly require updating when leases expire and new leases come on board and new agreements.
So it's
go in.
operational, it's
Yeah.
in use, it's implemented.
Yeah, it's live.
Okay, so we might need to look at a bit of wording there to clarify things a bit. Now, 6.1.5 again, change the key activity to read the same as the others, develop improved processes for leased land. And it's just been consistent right through the 6.1.15. 6.1.16, improve commercial services, business systems and process improvements. There's a request to change deliverable to 6 processes reviewed and implemented, being 2 processes per business unit. So that's a request of the target to change from 10 to 6. We're happy for that. Improve commercial service business systems and processes. So committing to being the quarry, airport and sale yards, a commitment to changing or improving 2 business processes in each of the units across the operational plan year.
So what are those business units? What do they comprise of?
The quarry, the sale yards and the airport.
And the sale yards, yeah.
So are we happy to amend that 10 to a 6? Yes, okay, 6.2.2, back to me. Okay, develop an integrated corporate performance measurement, monitoring and reporting framework. Very optimistically had August 2016 in there. Requesting an extension to December 2016. We've got the LGAQ performance benchmarking software workshops to be delivered to councillors and whole of management. We have those scheduled for later this month. So we will meet the target in December. Certainly haven't met it for August. I'm happy to approve that. 6.2.5, facilitate, produce and monitor council's operational plan to ensure adequate and efficient planning is undertaken. Had April 2017 in there, we'd just like to align that with June 2017 with the budget and financial year. We will certainly be planning and developing that earlier. It's just purely for the adoption by the same date as the budget and the financial year. So just that alignment there. So we won't have it adopted until then, but we will certainly be working on it well before then. So enthusiastically putting it in there, thinking of planning timing, but not adoption timing. 6.2.6, maintain strong corporate governance arrangements to ensure the highest level of organisation probity, integrity and compliance with legislative systems. So this one, as with the next 3 under this number, 6.2.6, we currently have less than 5% targets in there. Again, I would like to change those to more meaningful targets rather than less than 5%. Very difficult to control any numbers of referrals in relation to CCC, public interest or ombudsman space. It's more about ensuring that when we get referrals in those spaces that we do comply with the relevant legislation. So it's about changing the measures to say referrals to the Crime and Corruption Commission are in accordance with the relevant sections, and that we do all of those referrals 100% compliant.
So
the same with the Ombudsman and the same with our public interest disclosures. So when we have anything coming in those space, we abide by the relevant legislation and all the timeframes, etc. under those, rather than trying to not have anything coming in that space which we cannot control.
So are they the only 2 sections, section 38 and 40, that
they're the referrals section, so they're the sections that specific referrals to the CCC come under.
we're not going to miss any others by
No,
limiting ourselves?
they're the ones that we specifically refer under.
So instead of less than 5%, it goes to 100% then in the target?
Absolutely. So we want to meet our legislative requirements in relation to all of our referrals for the CCC. We want to meet our legislative requirements in relation to public interest disclosures and assessments completed under all of the legislation there. The same with the Ombudsman. We have specific targets under the legislation of what we need, or obligations we need to meet. We want to meet those 100%.
And was that likely to change the percentage of achieved? Is that Would that change that at all, Lyle?
No, not really. It really,
It's one of
it
those.
ebbs and flows. We could go through a quarter and receive none, so actually it would be, well, it could be 100% or it could be zero. That really comes down to
So
interpretation.
that 25% there is a reflection of a quarter of the way, a quarter.
Quarter, we
So
paid
it's
for a
spot on.
quarter. We
We
met
get
for a
100%
quarter.
for this quarter.
That's right.
Because if we met at 25% each quarter, we met 100% overall for the year.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
If you're happy for those three, it's just about more meaningful measures.
And so that's 2, 6, 2, 6, 2, 6, all 2 6s?
And the next, there's another one there though on corporate compliance framework. So there's another one in 6.2.6, which is related to corporate compliance framework developed and implemented. And we have December 2016. Would you like to talk to that, Lana, seeing that's your baby?
Yes, so again, we'll have the LGAQ here later this month to do, give presentations to Audit Committee, Council and to the WOM. When we developed the op plan, we didn't actually realise the extent of it, so there's over 6,000 obligations across more than 100 legislations. So we've really set ourselves up for fail there. There's no way we'll achieve it by December 16. So what we've actually done is split that out to say it's now a staged completion of legislation within that software program, and we'll be looking at completing 25% within this operational plan. So I note there it says an additional measure to be added, however, it's not, it's a change to the measure, because we wouldn't have the corporate compliance framework developed and implemented. That's the bit that would change to say staged completion, so it's just a change to the measure.
So what we're presently doing is looking at a schedule of how we're going to work with all of the key stakeholders across the organisation to sit with them and work through each particular obligation, how we're meeting that obligation, how we bridge the gaps, etc. So what you'll see in the presentations from LGAQ when they're up here is why it needs to be a staged process, why that engagement's going to take so long, and it will be probably a 12 to 18 months process before we're at the end of that whole compliance review framework. But at the end, we'll know exactly where we stand and be able to monitor it and have a program that keeps us on track going forward.
So you've had feedback from LGAQ about the timeframes, because next year we're only achieving a quarter of it in 12 months.
Quarter of
So
6,000.
yeah, so it's, yeah, I realise that, but then it gets quicker.
It does. I was speaking with them yesterday actually, and they have again chosen Central Highlands to be their little pilot guinea pig in some amendments they've actually made to the service. So what it will actually allow us to do is to put in all of our obligations, so all of these are all applicable, and the system itself will run the report. So we'll actually be able to measure our implementation rate a lot more effectively. So the feedback I've got from them today is that we're taking the correct approach. This is the way that's to be done, and if it's going to succeed, it needs to be done in this manner. As for the actual timeframes, they develop the service and they assist with the implementation. But like as late as last week, they were saying to me, "Oh, I didn't realise your delegations are over, 6,000 of them as well." So because they don't work with the data, it's very hard for them to comment. They're more systems in, but the new system will hopefully allow us to measure it so that for the next op plan, we can put some targets in place which are achievable and realistic. At this point, unfortunately, we have to just say 25%. So, we've already got 5 of the legislation partially done, remember, because we already presented that data, so that a lot of that is just data entry, so that's 5 partly done.
I'll get you another 4.
I think we need the whole dinner set.
What the LGAQ have indicated though is that councils that do try and achieve it all at once are the ones that end up putting the system aside because they're not giving it the time it needs to do it properly, which is why they've chosen us to sort of be the flagship council to take it forward. Again, because we're taking this approach, they're having us work with them on the delegations as well. So we're trying to be the lead council in this space to go forward. So hopefully we'll get some benefit from that as well. Okay, all right. Okay, manage the next one, 6.2.7, manage the outsourced function of native tribal cultural heritage to ensure compliance through management of utilisation of a self-assessment compliance system. We have the system in place as a manual system that we work through. We have draft presently a E3 learning of that. That will be up and running prior to the end of the year, so all staff that are relevant to having to utilise native title and cultural heritage assessment will be going through the program by December. So I'm just hopefully, if we can extend it out to June, those that the main ones will be through by December, but we'll look at who the key stakeholders need to be and roll it out a bit further. But if I could extend it through to June, make sure that we do absolutely capture everybody there. What I am also doing is working with IPWEAQ, so the Engineering Institute. They're looking at taking this system that we've developed with Gilkyson Legal and making it into an online system available for all councils. So I've got a meeting in Brisbane on Friday to look at what that looks like to develop that for commercial use across all councils going forward as well. But in the meantime, we need to have something manageable E3 learning wise for our staff internals. Some good stuff happening there, yeah. 6.2.8, manage fraud and corruption framework implementation in education. So we're just looking at a change in date to December 2016. So all of what you saw there today, we will now roll out as on an education program. We have that developed already to go on E3 learning. So it's about rolling that out through all of our staff who are currently on board. Those that are coming in as new staff are getting an induction as part of their corporate induction coming through. 6.2.9, undertake a review of the utilisation of council's land and fleet. This is General Manager of Corporate Services. He is requesting to add to the measure, develop a strategic plant replacement program, and the target date for that is now to December 2016. Draft program is already compiled through assessment of utilisation and efficiency review. So just a couple of slight amendments to that. So he's adding, request to add, is that an additional measure? Complete additional measure?
Yeah, but just to highlight that the disposal schedule and efficiencies is 75% complete, but they will also, during that process, develop a strategic plan replacement program. So it's just to, I suppose, document and provide a more holistic update to that overall area.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, page 5. 2 more to go. Make effort, people. Thank you. 6.2.10. This is GM of Corporate Services, so another additional measure request here in the review and update of Council's suite of contract documents for procurement arrangements. We're requesting the additional measure of finalising a contract register so that the contract register be incorporated into Council's contract management system. So there's a current option being delivered, which is in ECM for document control, but this better option may be included inside the corporate software for complete workflow, including payments. So just an additional measure to go in. Yep.
Yeah, well, there was some email there this week from the CEO regarding some of the stuff that needs to be added into this. This is going to change, or it's a living document. Approved.
6.2.12, GM Corporate Services. This is a request to extend the target date to December 2016. It was developing the central supply register to improve the usability for council staff and suppliers. commence delivery of training from October pending local preference policy adoption, supplier engagement planned to discussion changes prior to implementation. So I think there has been progress there. The local preference policy is out now, so that engagement's going to take place, but just needing that extension. That. 6.2.14, General Manager Corporate Services, implement reporting and analysis software for rates and charges to assist with data cleansing, reporting and budgeting. Now the next 1, 2, 3 items are all looking to be consolidated into this one, Mary?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So the request to change the measure is to include implementation, training and reporting and delete all the rest of the 6.2.14. So rewording to include all of those items in one, so instead of 4 separate items, we have one. Makes sense? Yep. Okay, 6.2.16, General Manager Corporate Services. It's about implementing a robust records disposal schedule, looking at moving that out to March 2017. It's about the organisational records disposal process. So by that time, you'll have a clearer estimation regarding timeframes. Will be available by the second quarterly report after assessment commences with completion of relevant policies and storage space preparations complete. It just needs that additional time to pull that together. Happy for that? There has been a fair bit of work taken there. Conversations. 6.1.6, again, extend to March 2017. That's the storage measures to be put in place to support the current and future storage needs. So clearly linked to the one above, needing that extension to March 2017. Okay, with that. 7.1.2, GM Corporate Services requesting an extension to 30th of June in relation to develop organisational performance management systems across council. Timeframes dependent upon managers and supervisors completing appraisals on time. So we look like we're 60% complete. Systems and change management processes implementing. So, sorry?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Sorry.
I had to take that.
That's all right, no problem. So we're happy to move
You're right,
that.
It's all right.
Sorry.
We're saying that the managers and supervisors aren't completing their appraisals on time.
Time.
Not
I
that
think,
they are, it's dependent on them.
Yes, and the deadline for the managers and supervisors is 31st of December, so
31st of
there still
December.
is time. But there may be a percentage that due to leave or whatever requirements, staff leave as well, may not make that.
Yeah.
So whether or not it meets the 30th of June.
So timeframes for all components of this action to be extended to the 30th of June.
It's a 9-month extension.
Sorry, yeah, so he's just reading through the commentary here.
And it makes you wonder how it was going to get done in the first 3 months.
Yes.
You know, we put a time frame on something for 3 months. Then we ask for an extension for 9 months.
So, yeah, I'm just trying to read through the commentary here where it says performance appraisal training rolled out and performance appraisals to be completed by 31st of December. Performance appraisals to be included in leadership and management training to be rolled out 2017. Managing underperformance training currently in design, awaiting approval of performance management policy and procedure to progress. Position description reviews to commence as part of modern award transition. Review of behavioural competency framework required to support overall project. So I think there's probably a couple of things tied in there. I think the performance appraisal things would be finished well before the 30th of June. I think, however, the commentary below timeframe for all components of the action to be extended to the 30th of June. I think the earlier timeframe was probably indicative of when the performance appraisals may have been completed. Is that correct, Mary? Just trying to
Yeah.
ascertain from what's in the commentary.
This, I'm not 100% sure on this one. There has been a number of discussions, and Rhonda and I are just kind of recap on that and looking at it. We're trying to, I suppose, correlate the comment and update that is provided
Right.
to the actual measure, because the measure is that systems and change management processes. So the system is about, then we are to measure how many, or if the processes have been implemented.
Right.
So that it may be misunderstanding, or, so it's unclear as to how the answer in that box relates to, I suppose, the processes. So maybe just a confusion, because the first one, the activity does link to performance management, which the answer, the update report one links to, but the measure may have been overlooked.
Yeah, okay. So, are you wanting to try and, what would you like to do in that space?
Just another question. Now they're awaiting approval of the performance management policy. Is there another policy to come for us? Halfway in
Is that in the organisational development area?
So I would think possibly suggested way forward that Ron and I just agreed that might work would be to simply obviously the target of September 16 has passed and the 60% completion. So I think we will need to look at an extension of some period of time. So what we might need to do is work with Adrian Grant to have a better understanding on what the measure is, if it is a correct measure. So maybe a request to review the measure, or else do a reassessment on the percentage achieved and the update to actually reflect the measure.
I think what it's indicating there are probably a couple of different measures. One's the performance appraisal and the achievement of that by December, and then the other part of that measure, which should be split out, which is the whole development of the system in relation to performance management. So I think they've tried to incorporate two into one.
Yeah, so
And I think that's where the difficulties being experienced here.
Yeah, so perhaps a list of the actual processes to be implemented might help clarify what has to be implemented, and then would help establish and clarify the percentage achievement and the time frame, so it's clear then what's being reported for quarter 2, 3 and 4.
So I think we'll bring that one back. If you're happy with that. 7.1.8, General Manager of Corporate Services. A request to extend the target date to March 2017. This is develop water industry certificate qualifications and training packages in collaboration with Central Queensland University. The scope and the resourcing is to be further defined. Key focus of this activity has been reviewed, and CHRC are currently supporting CQU in their development of this project by providing trainees for the program. Do we have anything further on that, Mary, that you can add? No, not on that one. So we don't know why the extension out to March, other than that we're working with CQU.
It's,
That's outside of our control.
Yeah.
Outside of our control, we're happy to
I mean, to find the trainees in the program.
find the trainees from it, yep.
It's a process.
Right, so we're happy to move that one out. 7.1.9, develop a suite of workforce metrics and information reports. There's a request to move that out to June 2017. The framework is in final stages of design and identification for relevant workforce metrics. Circulation to ELT for feedback and approval. Further work to be undertaken in development of relevant metrics as part of the organised the development and implementation of the OD management information system in conjunction with Council's IT strategy. Target date for implementation is dependent on the new corporate software implementation. So,
Yeah, you can put June plus, I reckon.
for that.
You know,
If I can just put here, if you don't mind as
Yeah.
well. The discussions that I've been having about the operational plan performance reporting and that Microsoft product, I know that organisational development are looking to that same product. So when they come up here for the workshops, they'll be actually looking at those to see whether it might be able to give us an interim tool until we get corporate software as well.
So that's the Power BI and
That's the Power
Microsoft
BI,
operational
yeah.
plan, maybe a solution for them.
Yeah.
Great. As a maybe before June, with a new one. Last page. We're there, thank you for your patience. 7.1.10, develop workplace relations improvement programs, General Manager of Corporate Services. We're looking for a change to the target. Instead of the staff satisfaction rate of 80% or greater, we're looking at staff engagement rate of 80% or greater. So we're talking about employee engagement programs, so to me that would make sense that it's an engagement rate rather than a satisfaction rate. Has anyone got an issue with the change of the word there? Okay, moving on, 7.1.13, employ 2 cadet engineers for local skills development by December 2016. I request to move that to March 2017 to coincide with the start of the academic year. Would make sense.
Yep.
Guys, can I ask when that was actually requested?
Did change to date?
All the actual cadets.
Which
When did we throw this in?
the
Like,
cadet too?
yeah, like employ 2 cadet engineers. When was line number 7.1.13
Put in.
into the plan?
Oh, from
When it was
developing in the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, when it was developed in,
May, last financial year.
Would have been the
It's
last.
unchanged, yeah.
And it's
thought about it
taken
then.
6 months to find 2 cadets. Who's in charge of this?
It is a, combined-
Infrastructure and utilities.
so I think as far as my understanding, in relation to this one, it was to go ahead with confirm the agreement of the position, so working very closely with the organisational development to design the position description, the job spec, and do the full, I suppose, HR recruitment side of things as well. And then by the time that was finalised, I suppose the first opportunity to recruit had passed. So that meant to make it feasible with the university. There's only, I think, 2 possibilities for recruitment. So we missed the first one due to, I suppose, preparing for that project and other delays. So it is kind of a deadline that's outside our control in one sense, but I believe everything is currently in place, and it is something that does attract quite a high quality applicant, and it is ready to go.
We've got the end of the year school. I'm not sure what the package entails, whether it's school leavers or mature aged or it doesn't.
University.
At a uni.
Sorry.
University.
Yep.
So there is I suppose a minimum requirement of what qualifies as a cadet. A lot of them might have a bit more previous knowledge on that side of things, but it is a highly sought after program for people to participate
There'd
in.
be hundreds of them coming off uni at this time of year. And why do we need to march?
Because they're cadetships. For the cadetships, they come from those that are currently engaged in the university study, and then they'll start back in March, and we generally engage through the universities.
So if they don't start back till March, I'll look for a job
February,
then.
I think it's actually February.
It is.
Sorry.
The idea is that it will be advertised, but that we will have them in place for March. And I think that the request was that we could set the target for June.
It's nearly going, by the time they start, it's nearly going to be 12 months from the time it was placed in this.
Yeah, probably 9 months.
I just
I find it disheartening. I'm sorry. And these are the little things that we need to change as a governance committee. The approval's been given by council. What slows the process up is it, again, lack of people on the ground in these places, lack of supervision and because we're so, oh yeah, we just keep throwing these dates out. And this, to me, is a no-brainer. It's an easy win. And it takes us so long to get anywhere. And having those 2 cadets could just help us. And had we have implemented them in September, could have them helping us through these times. But yet we're screening for people, but we won't go and get them. I'm sorry, maybe my naivety, but
Feedback on.
we're not helping ourselves, helping ourselves.
I guess I hear frustration, but to keep this going forward is just accepting that and making it happen in March. And then the discussion around how we action those things when we're approved is another conversation.
Sorry, I just,
No,
I've got
that's all
nothing to do, that's all, I just thought I'd come.
So we accept that?
Yes.
7.1.14, this is under me, develop a new intranet service across the organisation to enhance information sharing and cultural cohesion. There's a request to move the date out to November 2016. Delays have been experienced in the project, which have necessitated a request to the change of the target date. So the concept design of the intranet's complete. It's anticipated the updated intranet will be in use by the end of this month. So working with the designers, a few little hiccups and glitches, I guess, in that process, but a little bit of testing happening at the moment, but should go live with the intranet by the end of this month.
Conflict?
Yes, Andrea is confident. She's working on that with them quite regularly. So yes, I did clarify that with her. 7.2.1, improve integration of council safety management system in relation to standard operating procedures through creation of online standard operating procedure awareness program. So this is moving an item out from March 2017 to June, and a request to change the measure from draft implementation to draft implementation and training program commenced to from implementation and training program completed. So we've had a vacancy in safety we've been carrying for a bit of time now. Since February. Yeah, when Lila moved over into governance. We've backfilled that role now for a period of a few months. And I guess we've been trying to manage that, so we've had to readjust a few of our deliverables in that space. We are looking at other mechanisms presently to deliver some backlogs in that area, and one of them is outsourcing a few areas as well to try and get on top of our backlogs. So there's been some recommended alterations to the program delivery there by Sandy Schofield, our coordinator of safety there, and that is one of them. So rather than implementation and training, draft implementation and training program commenced by that June target. The next one.
Hang on, just.
Sorry, I thought that was safety related and they were rolling together. So no. Yes, questions?
So we've gone from implementation and training program completed in March to a 9-month extension to say draft implementation and training program commenced. So are we commencing we're actually commencing training, is that what you're saying there? Or we're just getting this draft implementation, the draft commenced?
So a 3-month extension from March to June.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Yes, that's
My
all right.
apologies.
That's all right.
3
months
months
extension, so commencement of implementation and training stage will commence through the E3 learning. So the draft. Sorry.
So what are we commencing?
Yeah.
I think it needs rewording because to me it read that we're just going to start the documentation.
No, sorry.
No, so
We're
just
commencing.
to be clear, the standard operating procedures already exist. The
Yeah.
only change here is getting them to online. So it's not like we're not doing SOPs or we're not undertaking all this training we do. It's about getting it to be more interactive and to also develop a portfolio of standard operating procedures for use upon commencement that are actually tailored to your position. So if you are a labourer in Parks and Gardens, you'll have to do all of this portfolio of them, whereas if you are in infrastructure and you're a grader operator, you'll have to do this portfolio. So whilst those documents all currently exist and they all currently do all of that, it's done in a manual form. So this is about moving it up a step, taking it online to our E3 learning system and also backing it up with observations by supervisors. So you know, in the Work Health and Safety Act, it says that we must ensure that our staff are capable and they're trained, and that's part of this. So yes, it does change the wording. It's a draft implementation and training program. So it's actually about how more the portfolio side of it, how we'll roll that out in the future and developing that program rather than getting it up to the online part.
But our employees can pull down a soft now, sure, can they?
Yes,
Like if they're on their iPad, they can bring it all up immediately.
Off the intranet, yes. So it's taking it from the intranet and then having to know, gee, today I might go out and I might use this and I haven't done a SOC for that before, to be more proactive and ensuring that all of our staff do it upon commencement and then on a regular basis. So it's about design of that whole program.
All good?
Thank you, Lyle.
No problem.
Foremost safety, All right, thank you. The next one, 2.5, installation of corporate kiosks at council depots. It's 50% complete, had a target of September, looking for an extension to December 2016, dependent on final requirements and types of technology used. So, there's an issue. Right. 7.2.7, improve corporate network connectivity, 65% complete, a requested extension to November, December. All hard work required is received, network design currently underway. Vendor engagement requiring design integration with current network, physical installation of infrastructure scheduled to commence soon after. So looks like it's progressing well. There's corporate Wi-Fi installation completed across all the sites. Happy for that to move to November, December. Yes? Okay, 7.2.8, review and replace corporate software system. Target to be extended to November 2016 to ensure adequate opportunity for the business to engage with the scoping process. Timeframes have been pushed back. New timeframe looks to have the scoping document target by the end of September, process completed by end of November, target to be extended to November 2016. And I do know that there's a lot of that happening as we speak over today and tomorrow. Jason's tied up in meetings with all of the operators to come to the table in that space. So I'm sure that the November timeframe will be met. 7.3.1, review and improve all corporate services, policies and procedures. We had July 2016 there. Got 80% completion, but we're asking for a change to June 2017 with a change in the activity to review and improve all organisational and development policies and procedures. Is there some commentary to that, Mary?
So reading the operational plan as it was developed from the start of the year, the activity is to improve all corporate service policies, so across all departments of corporate services, your IT, your finance, your organisational development, so all of the areas, and they would have policies and procedures reviewed and updated by council. They requested to change it to be moved specifically for organisational development. A lot of the finance and rates policies and procedures form part of the budget review. So they are automatically captured in the budget review process. And the request then was to focus on organisational development. rather than all areas of corporate services.
So we're fundamentally changing the policies that are being reviewed.
Yeah, so we're narrowing down the scope from being
To just the
HR
HR type policies.
Yes, it's a much more defined.
And the reason it was July 2016 would have been because it was budgetary policies previously. And that would have been required to change in line with the budget.
I'm not quite sure if that was, if that might have been, I don't know the short time frame, but I guess corporate services, the finance ones would have been adopted by July for sure.
Yes.
But you also have IT that wouldn't have been captured and O&D that wouldn't have been captured. So it is, I suppose, possibly a typo or misunderstanding with the original date. So now the focus has moved off that to come back to say corporate services policies rather than being finance, IT and O&D and fleet or asset management, focus just on organisational development for the rest of this financial year. And to make that achievable would be organisational development policies and by the end of the financial year.
Right, okay. Are we happy to amend that to reflect that?
I was just going to add to that for you, just to let you know that the organisational development policies, whilst they are 80% complete, there has been lots of impacts on that team for their policies. They're very closely linked to, there's one that's affected by the EB negotiations, as we know that's not going anywhere at the moment. And also there's other ones that are heavily involved with unions as well. So they have a lot of external players on there, so which accounts for the reason why they haven't actually progressed forward. So I would expect though, working with the policies that they will in fact achieve that.
And that's the other point for the Q1 review, the 80% completion rate is there based only on organisation and development policies. So no other manager within corporate services has provided input into that. So each quarter going forward, it will be reflective of O&D only if that is agreed by this committee today, or is it that it goes back to being the corporate services?
Are we exposed in any way? Is there a risk there of not having the other 20% completed? What sort of exposure are we open to?
For O&D?
There's only a couple that actually have not been reviewed at all. So all documents have been reviewed, and for all of those documents we do have current policies and procedures in place. And they are in line. A lot of the review is about making them clearer, using plain English. There's no real legislative things that I can think of where it exposes us. It's more about the focus of the documents. So some of it was splitting it out, having a policy in one document, a procedure in the other. The other one part of it is to provide clarity to the people using them and the people that are using them as a tool to manage others. So that's the work that's been done. So I believe a lot of what we require is in the existing documents. That's just for organisational development that I'm referring to, by the way.
And finance would be similar high level of compliance, if not higher.
Theirs would be higher because a lot of theirs got moved from policies and procedures to sit within the budget itself. So
there's not a great deal of risk or exposure there we should be concerned with.
That's right, and the managers in those particular areas and the coordinators for areas, let's say IT, for example, who we're now not including in this. You've got the state archives and areas like that put requirements on our, records disposal, and all of that happens through that area, and they're familiar with their own requirements, so the risk is mitigated in some way through that.
And captured in the, I suppose, the higher level of risk and fraud and insurance policies in place to help assist with what's required to have appropriate cover and monitoring for high level IT risk. So it would be something that would be monitored, I suppose, outside of this.
Thanks, Mary.
Now, was that councillors?
Yep.
Okay, lucky last. 7.3.2, it's General Manager Corporate Services. Design organisational people development and culture programs to embed CHRC values into all systems and processes. The request is to change the performance measure to read to develop, conduct and analyse staff culture surveys, which is a change from analysis of culture surveys. So just a clarifying measure rather than what's there presently. You with that?
Yeah, I don't know what it means, but yeah.
Just to make it a more comprehensive
Yeah.
analysis.
So rather than just analysing the culture surveys, it's about developing a more relevant survey going forward rather than just rolling out what we've done before. It's about actually having a look at it, what we want in that survey, developing an appropriate survey, conducting it and then analysing those results.
It's a funny one to end up with, to finish off on, because that whole culture is put it off, you'll be right, mate, we'll do it tomorrow. That whole 6 pages. And here we are, we talk about efficiencies at the base level. We talk about fraud of utilising a little bit of fuel, and we can't, and other management where I know that there's always going to be things that get involved that we cannot control. That of the things that we can control, we're still not controlling it. So our culture from the top down, we need to get away from extending and saying this is the time frame. And instead of putting it down as 3 months, put it down as 12 months. So that we're not putting yourself under pressure. Making sure that we've got our staff, making sure that we've got everything. You know, we see it all the time in council where we just have to put that survey off because of that decision off for another till March. It's been going on for 5 years because we overlooked something. And then we turn around and say, well, boys, you're not doing your job quick enough at that level. So, I've said, I'm ready to go home.
Okay, thank you for your patience today with working through that. I guess just a quick discussion on how you would like to progress with this. There are some items there that we were quite happy with amending. There were others that we wanted to have some further discussion on. The recommendation was that we were going to endorse that and move it through to the General Council meeting. I believe that now needs to change and come back to a Leadership and Governance Standing Committee. Is that where you wanted to go with it next week?
Yeah.
From our early discussion?
There's only 2 there, I think, that we're doing that.
So the main ones we're moving forward were the Saliards, clarification of that integration of the enhanced facilities.
2.4.6.
2.4.6 is the first one that I've got.
Yes,
Sorry.
that's correct. 2.4.6.
2.5.8.
2.5.8.
Front page. Here we
What
go.
about
2.4.9.
2.4.9? Sorry.
The reword with Mary.
Yes, to reword.
Oh, we-
No.
So I guess that there's some that I've got marked that just require maybe a reword or a clarification on a specific, like the first, like maybe the first one for infrastructure. Do we just want an email circulated as to the background on that report and then we accept it, or, yeah, so probably in detail whether they're going to be put through and accepted based on some email exchange prior to that, or if they're withheld, just conscious of the timeliness for Q2 and the impact of the changes in that.
I think we'll just clarify the other ones that we'd like to bring back to the table. So the next one was 6.1.8, is that correct?
Yes.
The Saliards one?
Yes, clarification.
2.5. So you have 2.5.8.
Yes, yep.
Then 6.12.
6.12.
Oh, sorry, I've just got that one back to the budget.
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry, not that one.
Then refer to question 2.
So 6.1.8.
Yes.
1.8.
This is 1, 2. 1, 2, 6.
That was to accept, but to clarify the definition.
Yeah, on what land it covers, do you want that to come
Yeah.
back when I?
I thought that was accepted and we're just going to circulate a definite list of what council land is captured in that register.
So 6.1.5 on the list was coming back.
Oh,
And the next one was 7.1.2, which was the org development performance appraisal matters. And they were the only ones to bring back. So in relation to what is to be brought back to the next leadership and governance standing committee, do we want to have the broader conversation in relation to the rest, or do you just want to talk about those items that you want brought back? How would you like to address it at the next meeting?
Well, potentially at the next meeting, we might be trialling a new format, going forward into next year where we'll have an hour and a half, around about an hour and a half.
Yes, I had heard that.
For all standing committees. We'll have all standing committees on one day
One day.
potentially. And,
With an option,
sorry,
with an option.
with an option. And,
The afternoon.
so, you know, it's awesome to go through that, you know, the way we did. That may have to happen from time to time at a special thing, but most of their meetings going forward will be an hour and a half. So, to go through it like that, whilst it's essential, it may have to be a standalone meeting from time to time.
But that stuff that we've got to bring back, we just bring the ones identified back, or do you want to bring the whole document back, but just review what we've got?
Just review those 6 items,
Yeah,
5 or 6 items.
So we'll go ahead and make the amendments to a version 2 of the operational plan based on that we'll be accepting the changes on all the rest of them.
Yes.
Have all of that prepped up. The only 6 items we'll bring back are the ones that we've got there to the next Leadership and Governance Standing Committee. Have everything else prepped up, ready to go as a document to be taken to the General Council meeting, which will be version 2 of the operational plan for 2016-17, once those next 6 items that have been brought back are finalised by Leadership and Governance and recommended through as version 2, once they're finalised at the next Leadership and Governance meeting.
How long will it take to modify and change and source information? Do we need to do it earlier than what we're anticipating in the next?
It would be ideal.
Can we get together briefly before the next council meeting and get this through?
As a Leadership and Governance Standing Committee, so have a special meeting or?
Yeah, you'll have to be advertising and around that, it's a public meeting. So whatever you want to do around this, yeah, you can't just.
Okay.
But our next Leadership and Governance meeting isn't like we haven't, it'll still be like this, I believe, won't it? We're not starting a new system just yet.
You know,
So to come to the next one and have a bit of discussion around it, we'll have time.
It's next month.
December.
Yeah.
Which is the 14th, isn't it?
13 or 14.
We will commence
14th, yeah.
The January is the end.
Oh, that's right, hangover.
December.
And January is the end of the second quarter.
That's the one.
So I'm like, yeah. So that's what we've got to roll.
Yeah, but they'll commence with 14, yeah, they'll start planning for the 2
No,
Just by email.
Hmm.
Like the changes, just by email.
Can we adopt with changes like we do with policies?
Because Q2, people will start filling in their updates mid-December before Christmas leave.
Yeah,
And
I guess it's our timing issues. Like,
so we,
the one thing we could do, I guess, is take the next one through to a general meeting at the end of this month, rather than back to a Leadership and Governance from a timing perspective.
Yeah,
That would be the only option we would have. It's not really in the protocol of what the standing committees are for, but if we're wanting to meet the timeframes of reporting for the second quarter against the version 2 of the operational plan, we would need to have it through a different process than what we're
And then it could be
looking at.
that, accepting the changes that we have now, go to the next meeting and are adopted as version 2. The ones that we've highlighted to come back with further discussion will become version 3. So that maybe that small time gap can be incorporated in that way as well.
Have the discussions with the activity owners,
Yeah.
get the clarification and incorporate it into version 2. Take that up to council, it can be adopted on that day, and if there's any minor changes, and we specifically discuss the 6 on that day as part of the presentation of version 2, it could be adopted with changes.
So if you just amend your resolution or recommendation to, it goes back to your council meeting,
to general council.
general council meeting, but the
The 6
amendments are made and reviewed at that meeting.
The 6.
It's just going back to 2.4.16, oh, sorry, 0.6, sorry, I switched off.
Yep.
And I just thought, is that pertain to and not worded correctly to the intermodal hub?
Undertake formal review.
Sorry?
What number?
Is it pertaining to the intermodal hub road corridor down to, is that what that pertains to? So we're already getting allocated some coin to get a report done on? Front page, 2.4.6.
No, I think it reflects,
I'm
relates to everything.
not sure.
Well, we looked at it initially relating to everything. It says there in the comments that it's rural road network by March 2017, and we had a target of December 2016. I just thought, is that the spider network or the spider
I
network?
don't think it is.
Don't think it is?
No.
Well, if it isn't, that's right then.
Yeah.
We're right. We need to work out what the hell it is. It's or is it required?
So-
Changes.
So are we happy with the recommendation Lauren is making for, Lola, would you just like to clarify that?
Can you do it, like, so I can type it?
Well, if you've just articulated first to see if we can get agreement.
My
and then we'll-
suggestion was that we incorporate the changes that we've agreed today so that they're adopted here and now.
Yes.
Incorporate them into a version 2 document of
Yes.
the operational plan. The governance team seeks clarification around the 6 that are in question. 5 that are in question, and incorporate those into version 2 as well. At the presentation at the general council meeting of version 2 document, that we adopt that document in its entirety, in particular focusing on the 5 that we have further clarified.
Yep.
And if we need to, for time's sakes, we could adopt on that day with changes which would be discussed at the meeting. So that's probably the quickest way.
Report on
Yes.
version 2 at the next quarter. Everyone's then in December getting their reports together on version 2 and we're on track. Happy for that? Yep.
Yes.
Thank you, Lola, good thinking. You're still awake, that's great.
Yes.
Is-
Uh,
No, it went right there.
Isn't it also?
I was just going to say, what do you call it, number 2?
Version 2.
Version 2 is to be presented and for adoption, not an adoption, but for adoption, made at the general meeting.
Is that reference to this being version 2? Or
So what?
2.6 clarification.
Version 2.
So yes, it'd be November 2000.
Happy with that, Charlie? Or leadership?
It's definitely 5 activities. time.
Counting how many rooms.
High activity. Pretty sure.
Fine, yeah. That's right, because we agreed with those, so we'll just delete those.
Happy with that, councillor? If someone that will move that, move council back to secondary councillor Littlejohn, all those in favour? Do you have any general business? No, good. So quick, man. Charlie, no general business?
No general business.
Right. Close our meeting. Thank you, everyone. I know it's long, but there's a lot of work in the background, so thank you.
Thank you all.
Massive thanks to the entire team, they're compiling those reports.